In this video, we'll be breaking down 2 hours of American dad facts to fall asleep to. Let's get started. First up, Roger has more than 1,000 personas, and a lot of them are wanted criminals. Roger's persona system stands as one of American Dad's most complex ongoing narratives, spanning 3 major episodes that build an interconnected mythology about identity, consequence, and the power of fictional characters becoming real through sustained belief. The Ricky Spanish storyline demonstrates how American Dad transforms a throwaway joke into legitimate character development while maintaining its absurdist comedy roots. The foundation of Roger's persona mythology begins with The One That Got Away from Season 4, Episode 2, which aired on the 5th of October, 2008. This episode explores what happens when Roger's disguises become so convincing that even Roger himself loses track of who he really is. The episode opens with the Smith family confronting Roger about his habit of stealing their possessions and vanishing for entire days while inhabiting various personas. They theorize this behavior stems from an inferiority complex, though Roger dismisses their concerns entirely. The real conflict emerges when Roger discovers someone has maxed out his credit card. Convinced he's dealing with identity theft, Roger launches a full investigation to track down whoever stole his financial information. Roger's detective work leads him to Sidney Huffman, a seemingly lovable man who works as a Bible maker. Roger spends several days playing vigilante, dishing out what he considers street justice against this supposed criminal. He eventually decides to escalate his revenge by torching Sidney's apartment. While pouring gasoline throughout the space, Roger discovers a photograph that stops him cold. The picture shows Sidney Huffman, and Roger suddenly realizes the truth behind the identity theft. Sidney Huffman is actually another one of Roger's personas, and Roger himself has been the one maxing out his own credit card this entire time. The episode uses a flashback sequence to show Sidney's perspective on the situation. Sidney had been living a genuinely happy life, enjoying his work and his relationships when Roger's interference destroyed everything. Roger had been misprinting Bibles with completely nonsensical content about transvestites who poop mozzarella dinosaurs. Roger destroyed Sidney's garden and went even further by raping it, which remains one of the show's most absurdly disturbing throwaway lines. Roger then told Sidney's girlfriend, Judy Panowitz, who worked as a department store salesgirl, that Sidney had various diseases. These actions systematically demolished Sidney's entire life, leaving him desperate and angry. Sidney came to understand there was only one way to permanently eliminate Roger from his existence. He hired a professional hitman to murder Roger. The hitman nearly succeeds in killing Roger, creating immediate danger that forces Roger into survival mode. Klaus advises Roger to impersonate Sidney and call off the hit, which seems like a straightforward solution until Roger encounters an unexpected complication. The hitman has built in a security protocol specifically for this scenario. He requires a password before he'll cancel the assassination, precisely because he anticipated Sidney might want to call off the hit. Roger has no idea what password Sidney would have chosen, so he tracks down Judy Panowitz to ask about Sidney's favorite words. This plan falls apart immediately when the hitman walks into the same location with his daughters. Roger spots the assassin and quickly hides in a changing room, where he overhears the hitman threatening to kill Judy unless Sidney appears. Roger's first instinct is pure self-preservation. He considers abandoning Judy entirely and letting her die while he escapes. But then, something extraordinary happens. Sidney appears to Roger in a mirror, manifesting as a separate consciousness that can communicate with Roger directly. Sidney criticizes Roger harshly, calling him out for being willing to let an innocent woman die because of Roger's own selfish actions. Roger begs his alter ego to provide the password that will save both their lives, but Sidney refuses. Sidney explicitly states that Roger needs to pay for what he's done, and this punishment is deserved and necessary. Roger argues back that they are one and the same person, pulling out a pair of black gloves that had been separated between them. Sidney recognizes these gloves immediately, and the memory triggers a complete flashback that reveals the origin of Sidney Huffman as a persona. Roger had wanted a pair of black gloves so desperately that he created an elaborate scheme to steal them. He pretended to be a sober, responsible person to get close to Judy, specifically because she had a key to a case that contained the gloves. Roger bought Judy an expensive necklace that cost significantly more than the gloves themselves, using this purchase to gain her trust. He then snatched her key and stole the gloves, causing Judy's manager to blame her for losing the key and nearly destroying her career. The moment Roger stole those gloves created a psychological break. Roger snapped and became Sydney Huffman to save Judy's career, developing a genuine split personality in the process. Sydney existed as a completely separate consciousness who had no awareness of being Roger, and Roger had no awareness of being Sydney until the very beginning of this episode when he discovered the credit card statements. This revelation reframes the entire conflict. Roger and Sydney are not simply two disguises that Roger consciously switches between. They are fundamentally different personalities sharing the same alien body, with each one capable of taking control without the other's knowledge or consent. Sydney finally provides Roger with the password, which turns out to be the absurdly simple Password 1. This mundane choice of password adds dark comedy to an otherwise tense scene, highlighting how even Sydney's security measures carry traces of Roger's chaotic personality underneath. Roger successfully calls off the hit, saving both himself and Judy from the assassin. But Roger then does something completely unexpected. He physically stabs Sydney, who has somehow manifested out of the mirror as a tangible presence. Roger literally kills his own alter ego, eliminating Sydney as a separate personality. Roger then immediately throws away Judy, Sydney's girlfriend, treating her as just another disposable element of a persona he no longer needs. Seeing Judy cry triggers something in Roger. He decides to stay with her despite having just murdered the personality that loved her. Roger confesses to Judy that he's a drunk, establishing honesty as his new foundation for their relationship. He also reveals that he has no genitals, which Judy matches with her own confession that she has both male and female reproductive organs. This bizarre exchange of highly personal information creates an unexpected connection between them, suggesting that Roger might actually maintain this relationship beyond the episode's conclusion. The episode includes a subplot where the Smith family becomes addicted to a game called Simon, playing it so obsessively that they refuse to move except to touch the game pieces. They eventually find themselves sitting in puddles of week-old urine, completely unable to break free from the game's psychological grip. Klaus feels completely ignored throughout this subplot, which motivates him to use a smoke bomb to make the Simon game disappear. The smoke bomb also transports Klaus to another dimension, something Roger had been attempting repeatedly throughout the episode, but kept failing because he would just fall asleep each time he tried. Klaus returns in another puff of smoke, accompanied by a strange sea creature that he immediately slays from the inside using a sword. Klaus claims he was gone for 60 years from his perspective, and that he was crowned king of whatever realm he had been transported to during his brief disappearance from the Smith family's perspective. The One That Got Away establishes that Roger's personas can develop genuine autonomy and that Roger himself might not be fully in control of his own identity system. This episode creates the foundation for understanding Roger's disguises as something far more complex than simple costumes and accents. The personas have the power to become real separate people with their own memories, relationships, and motivations that can directly conflict with Roger's interests. 4 years later, Ricky Spanish aired on the 6th of May 2012 as Season 7, Episode 17. This episode takes the persona mythology established in The One That Got Away and pushes it to its absolute extreme by introducing the most hated man in all of Langley Falls. The episode begins with caterpillars chewing holes through most of Roger's disguise collection, forcing him to search through old storage for something he can still wear. Roger discovers an outfit buried in a trash bag hidden in the back of his closet, clearly something he had deliberately tried to forget. When Roger walks through town wearing this particular disguise, he immediately draws intense hatred from everyone who sees him. People stare with pure venom in their eyes, and the hostility grows so threatening that Roger stops at a motel to hide. Brian Lewis, Principal Lewis's brother, assaults Roger at the motel. This violent attack reminds Roger of exactly which persona he's accidentally resurrected. He is now Ricky Spanish, the most hated man in town. Roger has Steve bring him a different outfit so he can escape the Ricky Spanish persona, and he explains to Steve the full extent of Ricky's crimes. Ricky Spanish has systematically ruined the lives of virtually everyone in Langley Falls through various acts of betrayal, theft, and cruelty. Roger decides to use one of the caterpillars he had placed in a jar as a metaphor for transformation, specifically the idea that people can change just like caterpillars transform into butterflies. He convinces Steve to help Ricky Spanish make amends with all the people he wronged, hoping this redemption arc will allow Roger to permanently retire this persona without the threat of violence following him everywhere. Their first stop is Brian Lewis's houseboat. Brian recalls the specific incident that made him hate Ricky Spanish with such intensity. Ricky knocked Brian unconscious and left him completely penniless in Tijuana without any identification. This act of cruelty left Brian stranded in a foreign country with no resources and no way to prove who he was or get help returning home. Despite the severity of this crime, Brian forgives Ricky relatively easily once Roger apologizes. The next person on the redemption list is Avery Bullock, Stan's boss at the CIA. When Roger and Steve arrive at Bullock's house, they find Bullock heavily intoxicated on cocaine. Bullock is so high that he's forgotten what Ricky Spanish did to him, so Roger has to remind Bullock that Ricky killed his wife, Miriam Bullock. Even this reminder of literal murder doesn't prevent Bullock from forgiving Ricky immediately, showing how powerful Roger's charisma can be even when operating as his most hated persona. The third person on the list proves far more complicated. Daniel is a former partner in crime who worked with Ricky Spanish on various illegal operations. Ricky betrayed Daniel by letting him take the fall alone in a sweater heist, which resulted in Daniel spending significant time in prison for a crime they committed together. After Roger gets Daniel released from jail, Daniel immediately tries to kill Roger on the spot. Steve physically intervenes and insists that Ricky has genuinely changed, convincing Daniel to give him a chance. The three of them go to a burger joint to discuss the situation, and this is where Roger reveals his true nature. Roger secretly tells Daniel that he has another heist planned and that Steve will take the fall for this one, exactly mirroring how Ricky betrayed Daniel in the past. Roger borrows Brian Lewis's houseboat and gets guns from Bullock, assembling the resources needed for this new heist. They arrive at the docks where Steve finally learns about Roger's plan to betray him. Daniel knocks Steve unconscious by hitting him with a gun, and Steve wakes up shortly afterward to find Roger and Daniel already executing the heist. Steve tries to stop them, but the guards are alerted to the crime in progress. A chase ensues across stacks of shipping containers, and Steve starts to fall from a dangerous height. Roger catches Steve, seemingly showing mercy and genuine care for his friend. Then, Roger steals Steve's wallet before deliberately letting him drop. Steve falls and gets severely beaten by the guards below, while Ricky Spanish and Daniel escape with their stolen goods. Steve spends genuine time in prison as a result of Roger's betrayal before Stan and Francine finally secure his release. Meanwhile, the butterfly that Roger had been keeping in a jar as a metaphor for transformation finally emerges from its cocoon. But the butterfly immediately dies in captivity, serving as the episode's perfect dark punchline. Roger's entire speech about change and redemption was completely hollow. Ricky Spanish never intended to change, and Roger never intended to abandon the persona's fundamental nature. The butterfly's death symbolizes that some things cannot be reformed, and Ricky Spanish represents a part of Roger that is purely irredeemable. Ricky Spanish demonstrates that certain personas carry such powerful negative energy that they can override Roger's better judgment entirely. Unlike Sidney Huffman, who developed as an accidental split personality, Ricky Spanish appears to be a deliberate expression of Roger's absolute worst impulses. The episode treats Ricky Spanish as almost supernatural in his capacity for cruelty, with the entire town remembering him as a legendary villain. The fact that Roger buried this costume in a trash bag at the back of his closet suggests even Roger fears what Ricky Spanish represents about his own nature. 7 years after Ricky Spanish, the Persona mythology reached its culmination in Persona Assistant, which aired on the 25th of February 2019 as Season 13, Episode 16. This episode directly examines whether Roger's personas serve any actual purpose or if they're simply elaborate excuses for Roger to goof off and avoid responsibility. The episode opens with Roger running through a full day of personas, jumping between different characters and their associated obligations. Stan becomes increasingly irritated because Roger's persona schedule makes him late to a happy hour evening they had planned together. Stan is slightly distracted during his complaints by noticing a bump on Roger's head, which Roger dismisses as nothing serious. Later at the mall, Roger misses his scheduled theme song appearance, and Stan explicitly criticizes Roger's entire persona system. Stan argues that the personas are just Roger's way of avoiding real work and responsibility, calling them fundamentally pointless distractions. Stan also notes that the bump on Roger's head has grown significantly larger since he first noticed it. Roger continues running through his various personas until he finally collapses from the physical strain. Medical examination reveals that Roger needs complete rest to recover from whatever is causing the bump and his physical exhaustion. The Smith family assures Roger they will do anything to help him during his recovery period. Roger makes a specific request based on their promise to help. He asks Stan to take over his entire day of personas while Roger travels to a hot spring to relax and recuperate. Roger attempts to stress how important it is to follow his character list exactly, explaining that each persona has specific obligations and relationships that must be maintained. Stan completely disregards these instructions because he still believes all the personas are fundamentally pointless. Stan blows off the job halfway through the day, abandoning Roger's carefully maintained schedule to do whatever he wants. This decision sets off a massive chain reaction of consequences that leaves the entire city of Langley Falls in complete chaos. By the next morning when Stan wakes up, Stan realizes he's made a catastrophic mistake and sets out to fix everything he broke, receiving advice from Klaus on how to approach the problem. Roger returns home from the hot spring with a major change to his physical appearance. The tumor on his head has transformed into a homunculus named Rogu, a small alien creature that emerged from Roger's body. Roger reveals to Stan that he deliberately set up this entire situation to prove that his personas actually matter to the functioning of Langley Falls. Roger was never in real danger, and the whole scenario was designed to teach Stan a lesson about respecting Roger's work. Roger is shocked when he discovers that Stan went out dressed as Ricky Spanish. This revelation horrifies Roger because he understands the danger of that particular persona better than anyone. As Ricky Spanish, Stan goes completely power mad and takes over the entire town through intimidation and violence. Stan fully embodies Ricky Spanish's legendary cruelty, and the personality seems to possess him rather than the other way around. Roger realizes he needs to stop Stan immediately, but Ricky Spanish is too powerful for any normal persona to defeat. Roger brings out the only persona powerful enough to meet Ricky Spanish toe-to-toe in direct combat, Jeannie Gold, a wedding planner who is also revealed to be Ricky Spanish's sister. The fight between Jeannie Gold and Ricky Spanish plays out as an epic confrontation between two legendary personas. They clash with equal power, but Roger still finds himself almost defeated by Stan's version of Ricky Spanish. The tide turns when Rogu, also dressed as Ricky Spanish, slices Stan's throat with a blade. This appears to be a fatal blow until the episode reveals that Rogu only cut the inner lining of the alien camouflage suit that allows Roger's species to appear human. Roger quickly peels the suit off Stan, which returns Stan's personality to normal by removing the influence of Ricky Spanish. During another happy hour after everything returns to normal, Roger pledges to spend more time with Stan as genuine friends rather than constantly disappearing into personas. Roger explains that his species developed homunculi, like Rogu, specifically as stand-in doubles who can maintain personas, while Roger himself engages in personal relationships. The episode ends with Rogu shown quarterbacking a football team, demonstrating that he can fully inhabit Roger's personas and maintain their obligations independently. Persona Assistant establishes that Roger's personas serve genuine functions within Langley Falls society and that their absence creates real chaos. The episode also confirms that Ricky Spanish exists as American Dad's ultimate villain persona, so dangerous that even Roger fears what happens when someone fully commits to embodying that character. The trilogy spanning these 3 episodes creates a complete mythology about Roger's personas as living constructs that have power beyond Roger's conscious control, with Ricky Spanish standing as the darkest expression of what Roger's personas can become. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next, Stan literally killed Santa Claus and triggered a full-scale ongoing war with the North Pole. Stan once killed Santa Claus and started an ongoing war with the North Pole. Stan Smith's conflict with Santa Claus represents one of American Dad's most brutal ongoing storylines, transforming the jolly gift giver into a vengeful warrior who returns annually to attempt murdering the entire Smith family. This feud spans multiple Christmas episodes and establishes Santa as one of the show's most dangerous recurring antagonists, proving that even holiday icons become terrifying when you shoot them in the face and dump their body in the woods. The war between Stan Smith and Santa Claus begins in For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls, which aired on the 12th of December 2010 as Season 6, Episode 8. The episode opens with Stan continuing to reject the idea that Jeff Fisher is now a member of the family despite being married to Haley. Francine suggests that Jeff should be included in their family traditions since he's technically part of the household now, but Stan completely refuses to acknowledge Jeff as anything more than an unwanted guest. Stan's stubborn rejection of Jeff serves as the emotional foundation for the episode's later events, where Stan will be forced to reconsider what family actually means. Despite Francine's strong objections to the idea, Stan gives Steve a gun for Christmas. This parenting decision is questionable at best and catastrophically dangerous at worst, but Stan views it as an important step in Steve's development into manhood. Stan apparently sees no issue with giving a firearm to a teenage boy who has demonstrated zero experience with weapons safety. The gift immediately proves to be a terrible mistake when Steve accidentally shoots Santa Claus. The shooting happens without warning or malicious intent on Steve's part. Santa simply appears, and Steve's panicked reaction with an unfamiliar weapon results in him shooting Santa directly. The family is forced to deal with the immediate problem of having Santa's body in their house. They make the collective decision to hide the body in the woods rather than face the consequences of what happened. This choice transforms an accident into a deliberate cover-up, elevating their crime from manslaughter to something far more serious. The entire Smith family participates in dragging Santa's corpse into the forest and concealing it, making them all complicit in the attempted disposal of Santa's body. Meanwhile, Roger pursues a completely separate storyline where he goes searching for the strongest whiskey possible. His search leads him to a moonshiner who teaches Roger the craft of making illegal alcohol. This subplot establishes the moonshiner's cabin as a location that will become crucial later in the episode. Despite the Smith family's efforts to hide Santa's body deep in the woods, Santa is recovered by his elves before he actually dies. The elves manage to resuscitate Santa, bringing him back from the brink of death. Santa wakes up with full memory of what happened to him, and he immediately vows vengeance on the entire Smith family. The jolly character everyone knows from Christmas mythology transforms into something completely different. Santa becomes consumed with rage and dedicates himself to hunting down every member of the Smith household to make them pay for shooting him and attempting to hide his body. The Smiths realize they're in serious danger and take refuge in the moonshiner's cabin that Roger discovered earlier. The cabin's remote location seems like it might offer protection from Santa's wrath. Jeff Fisher arrives at the cabin because he wants to spend the holiday with Haley, having no idea what the family has done or that they're currently hiding from a murderous Santa Claus. Jeff's arrival happens at the worst possible time because Santa soon arrives at the cabin with his entire army. Santa leads a full military assault on the moonshiner's cabin, using elves, reindeer, and snowmen as his soldiers. The family is forced to defend themselves against wave after wave of Christmas-themed attackers who are all trying to kill them on Santa's orders. During the battle, Santa recognizes that Jeff was not involved in the plot to shoot him and hide his body. Santa tries to convince Jeff to abandon the Smiths, offering Jeff a chance to walk away unharmed since Jeff bears no responsibility for what happened. This moment tests Jeff's loyalty to his new family, particularly to Stan, who has consistently refused to accept Jeff as a legitimate family member. Jeff makes the decision to turn on Santa and actively fights against him, ultimately pulling Stan to safety during a critical moment in the battle. This act of selfless heroism forces Stan to see Jeff as a true member of the family for the first time. Stan's perspective on Jeff changes completely because Jeff risked his own life to save Stan, despite knowing that Stan has never respected him or treated him with basic decency. Santa vows to kill every single member of the Smith family before the battle ends. The family finds themselves almost completely overrun by Santa's forces, facing seemingly inevitable defeat and death. The only thing that saves them is the arrival of dawn. Santa's army is forced to retreat when the sun rises, but Santa makes it absolutely clear that this is only a temporary reprieve. He vows to return the next year to finish what he started, establishing this conflict as an ongoing war rather than a single episode event. The Smith family survives their first Christmas battle with Santa, but they now live with the knowledge that Santa will return every December to try again to kill them all. 3 years later, Minstrel Krampus aired on the 15th of December 2013 as Season 9, Episode 8. This episode expands American Dad's Christmas mythology by introducing Krampus, a demon from Central European folklore who punishes naughty children during the holiday season. The episode begins with Steve becoming a brat as the holidays approach, displaying entitled and disrespectful behavior that concerns Stan. Stan decides to take Steve to see his grandfather Jack Smith to be scared straight, hoping that Jack's harsh demeanor will shock Steve into better behavior. Grandpa Jack tells Steve the story of Krampus, explaining how the demon punishes naughty children at Christmas by beating them with birch branches. Steve refuses to believe the story, dismissing it as an obvious fairy tale meant to scare him into compliance. Jack reveals that Krampus is completely real and that Jack himself captured the demon years ago. Jack keeps Krampus imprisoned in a copper pot in the basement, having trapped him there to prevent Krampus from punishing children. This revelation establishes that Jack has been holding a powerful supernatural entity captive for an extended period of time. Steve starts opening his Christmas gifts early, displaying exactly the kind of bratty behavior that Stan was trying to correct. Stan attempts to hide the presents in the basement to prevent Steve from opening more of them early. While Stan is in the basement, he is called by Krampus, who speaks to Stan from inside the copper pot. Krampus talks Stan into releasing him by promising to punish Steve for his bad behavior, convincing Stan that this is the perfect solution to Steve's bratty attitude. Stan opens the copper pot and frees Krampus, but Krampus immediately betrays him. Instead of punishing Steve, Krampus kidnaps Stan and demands that Jack be brought to him so Krampus can extract revenge for being imprisoned all those years. Stan tells his father what he did, and Jack is horrified by Stan's stupidity. Jack promises to use his CIA connections to rescue Stan from Krampus, but this promise is a complete lie. Jack takes off and flees the country instead of helping Stan, prioritizing his own safety over his son's life. This abandonment reveals Jack's true character and establishes that he cares more about avoiding Krampus than saving his own child. In Krampus's castle in Bavaria, Steve is imprisoned, to his surprise. Steve had not been kidnapped along with Stan initially, but Krampus apparently captured him separately. Steve is spanked by Krampus as punishment for his naughty behavior, experiencing the traditional Krampus punishment firsthand. Stan talks to Roger about the situation, and Roger brings up Santa as a potential source of help. Stan is extremely nervous about confronting Santa after their last encounter in For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls. Stan knows that Santa still wants to kill him and the entire family, making any request for help incredibly dangerous. Despite this very reasonable fear, Stan and Roger set off to the North Pole to ask Santa for assistance. Stan and Roger are captured immediately upon arriving at the North Pole. Santa beats Stan violently as Stan explains what happened with Krampus. Santa only agrees to help Stan if they can permanently kill Krampus, establishing that Santa and Krampus have their own antagonistic relationship. Santa also promises to take Stan off the naughty list if Stan helps kill Krampus, which is a significant offer considering Santa has been trying to murder Stan for 3 years at this point. This agreement creates a temporary alliance between Santa and Stan, united by their shared goal of eliminating Krampus. At Krampus's lair, the household goods come to life and try to convince Steve that Krampus only punishes naughty children because he genuinely cares for their well-being. The talking household items explain that Krampus uses pain and fear as teaching tools to help children become better people. Steve realizes that this explanation is actually true, and that Krampus operates from a place of twisted compassion rather than pure malice. Steve discovers that Krampus originally only intended to beat Jack to save him from being bad when Jack was a child. Krampus was captured in a moment of carelessness while eating strudel, which allowed Jack to trap him in the copper pot. This backstory reframes Krampus as a victim of Jack's betrayal rather than a purely evil demon. Meanwhile, Haley goes Christmas shopping but realizes she needs money to buy gifts. She goes to see Roger for a loan, but Roger refuses to lend her any money. Roger gives her the Help Wanted section of the newspaper instead, and Haley spots a job posting at the airport. She goes to the airport for the job and bumps into Jack, who is trying to flee the country to avoid helping the family. Haley confronts Jack about abandoning Stan and Steve when they need him most. She gets through to Jack emotionally, convincing him that family is worth fighting for even when it's dangerous. Jack changes his mind and heads to Bavaria to save Steve and Stan from Krampus. Santa and Stan arrive at Krampus's castle and launch their attack. They kill the household items that had been talking to Steve, destroying the magical objects that were serving Krampus. Steve tries to stop Santa because Steve has learned that Krampus is not actually evil, but Santa ignores Steve's protests. Santa shoots Krampus with a gun and finishes him off, killing the demon permanently. After Krampus is dead, Santa turns the gun on Stan and Steve, revealing himself to be the true villain of this entire situation. Santa explains that he was only partnering with Stan because Krampus was bad for the toy business. Krampus scared children and punished them, which interfered with the consumption-based gift-giving economy that Santa relies on for his power and influence. Santa never intended to honor his promise to take Stan off the naughty list. Santa plans to kill both Stan and Steve now that Krampus is no longer a threat to his business interests. As Santa tries to shoot Stan, Jack intervenes and saves Stan's life. Jack takes the bullet meant for Stan, injuring Santa in the process. Santa flees with his elves, escaping before Jack can finish him off. As Jack lays dying from his wounds, his blood and Krampus's blood intermingle on the floor. This mixture of blood creates a supernatural transformation. Jack becomes the new Krampus, inheriting the demon's power and responsibility to punish naughty children. This transformation ensures that Krampus's role continues even after the original Krampus was killed, with Jack now serving as the entity that balances out Santa's influence on children during the holidays. Minstrel Krampus reveals that Santa is not simply a victim seeking justified revenge for being shot and having his body hidden. Santa is actually a ruthless businessman who views the entire Christmas mythology through the lens of profit and control. Santa partners with Stan purely to eliminate a competitor who was interfering with his business model, and Santa has no problem murdering Stan and Steve once they've served their purpose. This episode recontextualizes Santa's vendetta against the Smith family, suggesting that Santa's anger might go beyond just the shooting incident. Santa represents the dark side of Christmas commercialization, willing to kill anyone who threatens his monopoly on holiday gift-giving. The ongoing war between Stan and Santa establishes that certain conflicts in American Dad never truly resolve. Santa returns as a recurring threat who appears in multiple episodes, always remembering what the Smith family did to him and always seeking opportunities for revenge. The show treats Santa as a legitimate military threat rather than a comedic villain, with Santa commanding actual armies and possessing the resources to wage sustained warfare against a single family. Stan's decision to give Steve a gun for Christmas created consequences that extend across multiple years and involve other supernatural entities like Krampus becoming drawn into the conflict. Stan's relationship with holiday figures becomes increasingly complicated as the series continues. Stan transforms Christmas from a joyful family celebration into an annual life-or-death struggle where the Smith family must defend themselves against magical beings who want them dead. The fact that Stan survives these encounters speaks to his training and resourcefulness, but it also highlights how Stan's poor decisions create ongoing problems that endanger everyone around him. Stan's refusal to simply apologize or make amends with Santa ensures that this war continues indefinitely, with each Christmas bringing new dangers and new opportunities for Santa to finally achieve his goal of killing the entire Smith family. The Christmas episodes establish American Dad's willingness to take beloved cultural icons and transform them into genuinely threatening antagonists. Santa Claus goes from a symbol of generosity and joy to a violent warrior who leads military assaults on civilian homes. Krampus transitions from a scary folklore figure to a sympathetic character who is trying to help children before being betrayed and imprisoned. These transformations demonstrate how American Dad uses dark comedy to subvert expectations while maintaining internal logic within its fictional universe. Santa has legitimate reasons to hate the Smith family, and his ongoing vendetta makes sense from his perspective, even as it creates absurd situations where the family must fight off elves and reindeer to survive the holidays. Stan's war with Santa also reveals important truths about Stan's character. Stan consistently makes impulsive decisions without considering long-term consequences, and he struggles to take responsibility for his actions, even when those actions create serious danger for his family. Stan gave Steve a gun despite Francine's objections, and that decision directly led to Santa being shot. Stan freed Krampus from imprisonment because he thought it would be an easy solution to Steve's behavior problems, never considering that Krampus might have his own agenda. Stan agreed to help Santa kill Krampus without fully understanding Santa's true motivations or considering what would happen after Krampus was dead. These patterns of behavior show that Stan operates on instinct and short-term thinking, which creates the perfect conditions for conflicts that spiral out of control and become impossible to resolve peacefully. The Smith family's survival against Santa depends on their ability to work together despite their dysfunction. Jeff proves his worth by saving Stan during the first battle with Santa, forcing Stan to acknowledge Jeff as a real family member. Jack redeems himself by taking a bullet meant for Stan, transforming into the new Krampus as a result of his sacrifice. These moments of heroism occur specifically because Santa's threat is so severe that the family has no choice but to overcome their personal conflicts and support each other. Santa's vendetta unintentionally strengthens the Smith family bonds by giving them a common enemy that requires genuine cooperation to defeat. American Dad treats its Christmas mythology with surprising consistency across multiple episodes. Santa remembers what happened to him and maintains his hatred of the Smith family across years of in-show time. Krampus's death and Jack's transformation create permanent changes to the show's supernatural hierarchy. The Moonshiner's cabin established in For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls provides a defensive location that the family can return to in future conflicts. These elements build a cohesive narrative where actions have lasting consequences and where characters operate according to understandable motivations, even when those motivations lead to absurd situations like Santa Claus attempting to commit mass murder against a suburban family. Stan's conflict with Santa represents American Dad's approach to serialized storytelling within an episodic format. Most episodes stand alone and reset the status quo by the end, but certain storylines, like the Santa feud, continue across multiple seasons. This approach allows the show to reward long-term viewers who remember previous Christmas episodes while still making individual episodes accessible to new viewers. The Santa War can be enjoyed as a standalone story in any single episode, but it gains additional depth and meaning when viewed as part of the larger ongoing narrative about Stan's inability to avoid creating powerful enemies through his reckless behavior and poor judgment. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, Haley actually married Jeff twice, and one of those weddings happened in space. Haley actually married Jeff twice, and one wedding happened in space. Haley Smith and Jeff Fisher's relationship includes two separate wedding ceremonies that occur under wildly different circumstances, with the second wedding happening after Jeff spent years lost in space trying to find his way back to Earth. Their marriage story spans multiple episodes and demonstrates how American Dad uses long-term storytelling to develop relationships while maintaining the show's absurdist comedy style through increasingly bizarre obstacles that keep pulling the couple apart. The first wedding attempt happens in 100 AD, which aired on the 3rd of October 2010 as Season 6, Episode 1. This episode serves as the show's 100th episode celebration, and Roger opens it by announcing they will celebrate by killing off 100 previous characters throughout the story. The episode begins at the Smith house with Jeff serenading Haley with a song. Stan immediately starts shooting at Jeff, but Haley begs him not to kill Jeff. However, Haley also declares that she has no interest in Jeff at the present moment, establishing tension in their relationship right from the start. Roger and Steve lose the remote to the television and decide to go on another adventure as their superhero alter egos Wheels and the Legman. Klaus cuts them off before they can start, and Roger discovers he had the remote in his butt the entire time. Stan and Francine confront Jeff together and tell him directly that he is not good enough for Haley. This conversation leaves Jeff in tears, devastated by the rejection from Haley's parents. Meanwhile, at the CIA, Bullock has assigned Reginald the koala to be his personal chauffeur. Reginald sees Jeff crying and tries to convince him that Haley just needs her space and that things will work out eventually. Roger and Steve attempt to keep their Wheels and the Legman fantasy going, but they have trouble finding any actual mystery to solve, highlighting how their superhero personas exist mostly in their imagination. Jeff confronts Haley at Groff Community College and opens up to her about his feelings. This conversation apparently goes well enough that they make a major decision together. When Stan and Francine return home, they find a note from Haley explaining that she and Jeff have run off to elope. Stan reveals that he planted a tracking chip in the kids' skulls, which is a disturbing parenting decision that Stan apparently made at some point in the past. Stan and Francine use this tracking chip to start following Haley and Jeff to stop the elopement. During the drive, Jeff reveals his plans for their future together, and these plans leave Haley with serious regrets about running away with him. The tracking chip leads Stan and Francine to a gas station where they discover that Haley has transferred the chip to a dog, successfully fooling the tracking system. However, Haley made a critical mistake by borrowing her mom's credit card. Stan and Francine start following the credit card transactions to track where Haley and Jeff are going. Fearing they still will not catch up in time to stop the wedding, Francine grumbles about the $50,000 they had set aside for a dream wedding for Haley. Stan gets an idea and decides to offer this entire $50,000 as a reward to anyone who can stop the wedding before it happens. This announcement sets off a wild chase with numerous people pursuing Jeff and Haley to claim the reward money. Jeff and Haley stop at a motel to rest during their journey. Haley becomes depressed about their prospects for the future and goes out for a walk to clear her head. While Haley is gone, Jeff sees the reward offer on television and immediately panics. Multiple people pursue Jeff and Haley to Reginald's amazement as he watches the chaos unfold. Bullock tells Reginald about his sexual encounters with Haley from a previous episode titled Bullocks to Stan, and this revelation angers Reginald tremendously. Reginald challenges Bullock to a fight over disrespecting Haley in this way. Jeff makes a decision that appears to betray Haley completely. Jeff calls Stan directly to take advantage of the reward money, offering to leave Haley in exchange for the $50,000. Stan and Francine meet Jeff at a roadside store where Jeff takes the money from them. Jeff tells Stan and Francine to find Haley back at the motel, giving away her location in exchange for the cash. Meanwhile, back at the motel, Haley is desperately trying to avoid everyone who is trying to capture her to claim the reward. Stan arrives at the motel and announces that Jeff was already given the reward money for turning Haley in. Francine tells Haley that Jeff is no good and that Haley deserves better than someone who would betray her for money. Haley appears devastated but leaves to get her stuff from the motel room. Stan and Francine become puzzled when Haley takes too long to retrieve her belongings. They break into the motel room to check on her and discover that the motel manager had hanged himself. Haley left a note explaining the truth behind what just happened. Haley and Jeff had plotted together to rip off Stan and Francine for the reward money so they could elope in style with $50,000 to start their life together. Haley points out in the note that the scheme was Jeff's idea, giving him credit for the plan. Stan finally becomes impressed with the resourcefulness that both Jeff and Haley showed in executing this elaborate con. The episode ends with Jeff and Haley riding off together, having successfully stolen $50,000 from Stan and Francine. The episode strongly implies that Jeff and Haley successfully elope and get married using the stolen money, though the actual wedding ceremony is not shown on screen. This episode establishes Jeff and Haley as married, which becomes their status for subsequent episodes. The story takes a dramatic turn in Lost in Space, which aired on the 5th of May 2013 as Season 8, Episode 18. This episode focuses entirely on Jeff's perspective and what happened to him after he was abducted. The episode reveals that Jeff was pulled aboard a spaceship that had been sent to remove Roger from Earth. The ship's arrival at the Smith house separates Jeff from Haley, leaving Haley to wonder what happened to her husband. Jeff finds himself enslaved to work at a shawarma stand in a giant space mall operated by aliens. Jeff works alongside Sinbad, who is also a slave at the shawarma stand. They have to work quickly whenever Emperor Zing comes by to inspect their operation. Jeff protests that he misses his love and wants to return to Earth, but he is zapped with electricity and ignored by his captors. After work, Jeff and the other slaves go out for drinks at a bar. Jeff is propositioned by a horny, shape-shifting bartender who can take any physical form. Jeff learns that the only chance he has to escape his fate as a slave is to prove his true love for Haley through some kind of test. However, the stakes of this test are extremely high. If Jeff fails to prove his love for Haley, his genitals will be physically removed and stored in a fishbowl. Jeff literally must put his balls on the line to win his freedom. Jeff takes the test, which involves reviewing his memories of his relationship with Haley. The test shows that Jeff has not entirely treated Haley well during their relationship, displaying various moments where Jeff was selfish or inconsiderate. Emperor Zing reviews the evidence and declares that Jeff has failed the test. Jeff protests that he really can love Haley the right way and that he deserves another chance. But the Emperor and his officials declare that Jeff still lost the test, according to their rules. Jeff is sentenced to have his genitals removed as punishment for failing to prove his love was genuine. While moping at the slave camp awaiting his castration, Jeff is tempted to have one last night of sex before losing his genitals forever. The shape-shifting bartender offers Jeff this opportunity, but Jeff finds himself refusing to cheat on Haley, even though he believes he will never see her again. This refusal becomes important evidence of Jeff's genuine love. Jeff realizes that the test only showed the bad memories from his relationship with Haley and never showed any of the good times they shared together. Jeff decides to confront the Majestic, who is apparently the entity responsible for reviewing memories and making judgments about love. Jeff lowers himself into a pit where the Majestic resides. Jeff complains that the Majestic only showed the bad memories and ignored all the positive experiences that prove Jeff's love for Haley is real. The Majestic reveals that his instructions from Emperor Zing were specifically to only show the bad memories. The Majestic also reveals that Emperor Zing had a lost love of his own, and this personal heartbreak has made the Emperor bitter and cruel. The Majestic and Jeff decide to start a revolution among the slaves after realizing that the Emperor has been using the love test to punish people unfairly. Jeff is about to lose his genitals when he reveals the Emperor's treachery to all the citizens watching the punishment. The revelation that the test was rigged turns the entire slave population against Emperor Zing. With Sinbad's help, Jeff fights his way toward an escape pod, while the Majestic reveals more details about the Emperor's own love life. The Majestic explains that the Emperor's relationship was ruined by Roger cheating on him, which explains why Roger's species sent a ship to retrieve him from Earth in the first place. The rest of the Emperor's people join the rebellion against him, leaving only his personal guards to fight for the Emperor. Sinbad helps Jeff reach an escape pod and sends him on his way toward Earth. Sinbad holds off the guards to protect Jeff's escape, and this heroic act costs Sinbad his own life. Jeff successfully launches the escape pod and begins his journey back to Earth. However, Jeff discovers a devastating problem. The universe contains thousands of different Earths across multiple dimensions and alternate realities. Jeff must explore thousands of worlds in order to find the correct Earth where Haley is waiting for him. The episode reveals at the end that Sinbad came back as a ghost, similar to Jedi Force ghosts from Star Wars. Sinbad's spirit joins Jeff on his journey to help him find the right Earth. Jeff's absence from Earth creates a gap in the show where Jeff simply does not appear in episodes for an extended period. The show explains his absence through the Lost in Space episode, establishing that Jeff is actively trying to return to Haley but is lost somewhere in the multiverse, searching for the correct version of Earth. This storyline allows the show to remove Jeff from the main cast temporarily while maintaining his relationship with Haley and giving him a legitimate reason for being gone. Jeff eventually returns to Earth in later episodes, though the specific details of how he found the correct Earth and made it back home are revealed across multiple episodes. His return reunites him with Haley, but their relationship has been strained by the extended separation. The fact that Jeff spent years lost in space, trying to return to Haley, serves as proof of his dedication to their relationship, validating that he did truly love her enough to pass the test that Emperor Zing set for him. The two wedding storyline demonstrates American Dad's approach to relationship development across multiple seasons. Haley and Jeff's first elopement happens quickly and is primarily focused on them scamming Stan and Francine out of $50,000. The actual wedding ceremony is not shown, and the marriage happens off-screen between episodes. This approach treats their marriage as an established fact that the show can build future stories around, rather than as a major romantic moment that needs extensive screen time. Jeff's abduction and time in space creates a forced separation that tests their marriage in ways that normal sitcom relationships rarely experience. Most sitcoms might have a couple deal with one partner taking a job in another city or going on an extended business trip. American Dad sends Jeff to a completely different part of the universe where he becomes enslaved in a space mall and must prove his love by risking castration before fighting in a revolution against an alien emperor. This escalation takes a standard relationship obstacle and pushes it to an absurd extreme while still maintaining emotional stakes that matter to the characters. The second wedding, which happens in space according to the episode description but is not shown on screen in the episode itself, represents Jeff and Haley recommitting to each other after Jeff proves his love by refusing to cheat on Haley even when offered a consequence-free opportunity. Jeff's decision to remain faithful to Haley despite believing he would never see her again demonstrates character growth and genuine love that goes beyond the selfish behavior shown in the memory test. This moment of faithfulness becomes more important than any formal ceremony could be. Haley's perspective during Jeff's absence is not explored in detail during Lost in Space, since the episode focuses entirely on Jeff's journey. Haley is left on Earth believing that Jeff was taken by aliens, and she has no way to know if he is alive or if he will ever return. This uncertainty creates a different kind of emotional challenge for Haley, who must decide whether to wait for Jeff or move on with her life. The show establishes that Haley does wait for Jeff, maintaining their marriage even during his years-long absence. The relationship between Haley and Jeff becomes one of American Dad's most developed, ongoing storylines, despite Jeff being a relatively minor character compared to the main Smith family. Their marriage survives Stan's disapproval, a con job to steal $50,000, Jeff's abduction by aliens, years of forced separation across different dimensions, and Jeff risking castration to prove his love. These obstacles create a surprisingly resilient relationship that demonstrates actual commitment rather than just romantic attraction. Jeff's journey through space to return to Haley parallels classic Odyssey stories, where a hero must overcome impossible obstacles to return home to their loved one. The show treats this journey seriously, despite the absurd elements like working at a space mall, shawarma stand, or being helped by Sinbad's Force Ghost. Jeff's determination to find the correct Earth out of thousands of possibilities shows dedication that goes far beyond what most sitcom characters would do for their relationships. The dual wedding structure also allows American Dad to explore different aspects of marriage as an institution. The first wedding happens as an act of rebellion against Stan and Francine's disapproval, turning the ceremony into a tool for independence and financial gain. The second wedding or recommitment happens after Jeff proves his love through sacrifice and faithfulness, making it about genuine emotional connection rather than defying authority or making money. Both weddings serve different narrative purposes while developing Haley and Jeff's relationship. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, Klaus was originally an Olympic ski jumper until the CIA put his brain into a fish. Klaus was an Olympic ski jumper whose brain was put in a fish by the CIA. Klaus Heisler exists as one of American Dad's most tragic characters, a German Olympic ski jumper whose brain was surgically transferred into a goldfish body by the CIA to prevent him from winning a gold medal for East Germany. His transformation from elite athlete to talking pet fish creates an ongoing source of dark comedy while exploring themes of lost identity, powerlessness, and casual cruelty. Klaus's backstory as an Olympic ski jumper establishes him as someone who once possessed extraordinary physical capabilities and international recognition. Olympic athletes represent the peak of human achievement, requiring years of dedicated training, natural talent, and mental fortitude to compete at that level. Ski jumping specifically demands incredible courage because athletes launch themselves off massive ramps at high speeds, with only their technique protecting them from potentially fatal crashes. Klaus achieved success in this demanding sport, making him a celebrated figure in Germany before the CIA destroyed his life. The CIA's decision to transfer Klaus's brain into a goldfish body was done specifically to prevent Klaus from winning a gold medal for East Germany. This was an act of sports sabotage during the Cold War era when Olympic victories carried significant propaganda value for competing nations. The United States government apparently viewed Klaus's potential gold medal as threatening enough to American interests that they authorized surgically removing his brain and placing it into a fish. This represents one of the most extreme examples of sports interference imaginable, where a government agency destroyed an athlete's entire life simply to prevent him from winning a competition. The brain transfer itself happened through surgical procedure, though the show provides limited details about the specific medical process. The CIA possesses the technology to remove a human brain, keep it functioning, and transfer it into a goldfish body while maintaining the person's consciousness, memories, personality, and ability to speak. Klaus can communicate verbally despite being a goldfish, which the show never explains. This ability to talk is simply accepted as part of Klaus's existence without any scientific justification provided. Klaus's physical transformation from human to goldfish creates profound limitations that define his entire existence in the Smith household. Goldfish possess no limbs, making Klaus completely dependent on others for basic movement outside his bowl. He cannot manipulate objects, open doors, or interact with the physical world in most meaningful ways. Klaus lives in a fishbowl that can be moved, dumped out, or ignored by anyone in the household. His inability to physically enforce his will or defend himself makes Klaus the most vulnerable member of the Smith family. The show never reveals what happened to Klaus's original human body after the brain transfer. Klaus's physical form presumably still existed somewhere after the surgery, but the series provides no information about where that body went or whether anyone else inhabits it. This absence of information leaves Klaus's original body as a complete mystery. The body could be in storage, could have been destroyed, or could be used for some other purpose, but the show never addresses this question. The psychological impact of Klaus's transformation manifests in various ways throughout the series. Klaus frequently expresses frustration with his powerless position in the household and his inability to participate in activities that require a human body. His sexual frustration is a recurring theme because Klaus retains human desires and attractions despite inhabiting a fish body that cannot physically act on those feelings. Klaus often makes inappropriate comments or behaves creepily toward women, particularly Francine. This behavior is portrayed comedically, but it reflects Klaus's situation where he is trapped between human consciousness and fish reality. Klaus's relationship with the Smith family reveals the complicated dynamics of his position in the household. Stan treats Klaus as a pet, despite Klaus being a human consciousness with Olympic-level achievements in his past life. The casual disregard Stan shows toward Klaus's opinions and feelings demonstrates how the family often ignores Klaus or dismisses his input. Francine generally treats Klaus with more respect but still views him primarily as a pet fish rather than a former elite athlete. Steve, Haley, and Roger engage with Klaus more as an equal in various episodes, though their treatment of him varies depending on the situation. Klaus's inability to leave the Smith household creates an ongoing imprisonment. Klaus cannot simply swim away because he is a goldfish who requires his bowl to survive. He depends entirely on the Smith family for food, clean water, and basic survival needs. This dependence means Klaus must tolerate whatever treatment the family subjects him to, even when they ignore him, mock him, or actively harm him. Klaus has nowhere else to go and no other options for survival outside the Smith household. Klaus's memories of his human life and athletic career serve as constant reminders of everything he lost when the CIA put his brain in a fish. Klaus occasionally references his ski jumping days or mentions experiences from his human life. An Olympic athlete lives at the peak of physical achievement, celebrated for their body's capabilities and their mastery of their sport. Klaus now exists as perhaps the most physically limited being imaginable, unable to even move himself from one room to another without help. This creates a sharp contrast between who Klaus was and what he has become. The show occasionally explores Klaus's attempts to reclaim some aspect of his human identity or physical capabilities. These storylines typically involve Klaus trying to find solutions to his situation or seeking some form of satisfaction despite his fish form. Klaus's desperation in these episodes reveals his suffering and his unwillingness to accept his current existence as permanent. However, the show's status quo typically reasserts itself, and Klaus remains a goldfish by each episode's end. Klaus's position as a German living in an American household appears in various episodes where Klaus references his German background or uses German phrases. Klaus speaks English fluently throughout the series, though he maintains his German identity through occasional cultural references. Klaus was taken from Germany and placed in suburban Virginia with the Smith family, separating him from his home country. The Cold War context of Klaus's transformation provides the historical background for why the CIA performed this operation. During the Cold War, the United States and Soviet Union competed intensely in the Olympics, viewing athletic victories as proof of their respective systems' superiority. East Germany, as a Soviet ally, was particularly targeted by American intelligence operations. Klaus's potential gold medal for East Germany apparently warranted extreme measures from the CIA's perspective, leading them to authorize the brain transfer to prevent his Olympic success. Klaus's Olympic achievements before his transformation established that he possessed exceptional discipline, courage, and physical skill. Ski jumpers train for years to perfect their technique while managing the psychological pressure of launching themselves off massive ramps at high speeds. Klaus succeeded at this level, meaning he overcame fear, mastered complex techniques, and competed against the world's best athletes. The CIA took someone with these remarkable qualities and reduced him to a talking goldfish, destroying years of training and natural talent in a single surgical procedure to achieve their goal of preventing an East German gold medal. Klaus's daily existence in the Smith household involves long periods of being ignored or forgotten. The family frequently has conversations or makes decisions without consulting Klaus or considering his perspective. Klaus can see everything happening in the house, but cannot participate in most activities. Klaus watches human life continue around him without being able to fully engage with it in many situations. Klaus lives in his bowl, observing the family's activities from his limited vantage point. Klaus's sexual frustration manifests in ways that the show plays for dark comedy. Klaus makes advances toward Francine and other women, despite the obvious impossibility of any romantic or sexual relationship developing. These advances are portrayed as creepy or pathetic in various episodes. Klaus makes these advances even though they will never succeed, attempting to maintain some connection to his human desires. The show uses Klaus's sexual frustration to generate uncomfortable humor while illustrating the mismatch between Klaus's consciousness and his physical reality. Klaus occasionally demonstrates surprising capabilities or knowledge that remind viewers he was once an accomplished human being. Klaus can be insightful about relationships or offer practical advice when the family actually listens to him. These moments of competence contrast with his usual position as the least important household member, showing that Klaus retains his intelligence and life experience despite his transformation. However, the family typically ignores Klaus's advice or only remembers his existence when they need something from him in many episodes. Klaus's existence as a goldfish also creates practical problems that the show occasionally explores. Someone must remember to feed Klaus, clean his bowl, and maintain the water quality necessary for his survival. The family sometimes forgets these basic responsibilities in various episodes, putting Klaus at risk. Klaus cannot do these things himself and must ask for help, depending on someone remembering he exists and needs care. Klaus's brain transfer was apparently performed without his consent based on the circumstances shown in the series. There is no indication that Klaus volunteered for this procedure or agreed to have his brain removed. The CIA decided to use Klaus for their sports sabotage operation and surgically removed his brain to prevent him from winning the gold medal. Klaus was targeted specifically because of his athletic abilities and his potential to win for East Germany. The show sometimes uses Klaus as comic relief specifically because of his powerlessness. Klaus will express strong opinions or make threats that everyone ignores because he is a goldfish who cannot enforce his will. This dynamic creates humor from Klaus's impotent rage. Klaus retains all the personality and emotional responses of his human self, but none of the physical capability to make those responses particularly meaningful in most situations. Klaus can be angry, but his anger often changes nothing. Klaus can threaten people, but those threats are typically empty because he cannot act on them physically. Klaus occasionally expresses hope that his situation might change or that he might find a way back into a human body in various episodes. These moments show that Klaus has not given up on recovering his human life, even after living as a goldfish for an extended period. Klaus continues to seek solutions or opportunities to change his circumstances when they appear. This persistent hope keeps Klaus actively engaged with trying to improve his situation rather than simply accepting his fate. The relationship between Klaus and Roger sometimes involves interactions where both characters deal with their unique positions in the Smith household. Roger is an alien who must wear disguises to leave the house safely, while Klaus is trapped in a fishbowl. Both characters face limitations that the human family members do not experience. Klaus and Roger both depend on the Smith family for survival in different ways. creating occasional moments where they understand each other's situations. Klaus's brain transfer operation represents an extreme example of government interference in sports competition. The CIA chose to permanently transform a human athlete into a goldfish rather than use more conventional methods of preventing his Olympic participation. This decision reveals how far the agency was willing to go to achieve their goals during the Cold War era. Klaus was specifically selected for this operation because of his ski jumping abilities and his potential to win a gold medal that would benefit East Germany's international reputation. The mechanics of how Klaus speaks as a goldfish remain unexplained throughout the series. Goldfish do not have vocal cords or the physical structures necessary for human speech, yet Klaus communicates verbally with the Smith family in every episode. The show treats Klaus's ability to talk as a natural result of having a human brain, ignoring the biological impossibilities involved. This unexplained ability is simply accepted as part of Klaus's character without requiring scientific justification. Klaus's fishbowl serves as his primary living space and the center of his limited world. The bowl restricts Klaus's movement to swimming in circles within a small, contained space. Klaus can see out of the bowl and observe what happens in whatever room the bowl is placed, but he cannot move between rooms without someone carrying him. The fishbowl represents both Klaus's home and his prison, providing the environment he needs to survive while also physically containing him in one small location. The show depicts Klaus as having full memory of his life before the brain transfer. Klaus remembers being human, competing in ski jumping, and living in Germany. These memories persist despite Klaus's transformation, meaning Klaus experiences constant awareness of everything he lost. Klaus knows what it felt like to have a human body, to move freely, and to compete as an Olympic athlete. These memories create ongoing psychological pain as Klaus compares his past capabilities to his current limitations. Klaus's interactions with the Smith family vary significantly depending on which family member he is dealing with. Stan frequently dismisses Klaus or treats him as unimportant. Francine shows Klaus more consideration in many episodes, but still often overlooks him. Steve sometimes forms alliances with Klaus for various schemes. Haley's interactions with Klaus are less frequent and vary by episode. Roger and Klaus have a complicated relationship that shifts between antagonism and occasional cooperation depending on the situation. Klaus represents one of the show's clearest examples of a character suffering permanent consequences from a single event. Unlike many cartoon characters who reset to normal after each episode, Klaus remains a goldfish throughout the entire series. The brain transfer permanently altered Klaus's existence, and this change persists across all episodes. Klaus cannot simply recover from what the CIA did to him, making his situation fundamentally different from most episodic cartoon conflicts. The CIA's sports sabotage program that targeted Klaus suggests the agency conducted similar operations against other athletes from opposing nations. Klaus appears to be one specific example of this type of interference, though the show does not explore whether other athletes suffered similar fates. The fact that the CIA had the technology and willingness to perform brain transfers for sports sabotage implies they may have used this capability multiple times during the Cold War. Klaus's situation creates uncomfortable questions about identity and personhood that the show occasionally acknowledges, but rarely explores in depth. Klaus has a human brain and human consciousness, but exists in a goldfish body. This raises questions about what makes someone human and whether physical form determines how someone should be treated. The show uses Klaus's situation for comedy rather than serious philosophical exploration, but these questions exist in the background of Klaus's character. Klaus lives with the knowledge that his Olympic career and potential gold medal were stolen from him by the CIA. Klaus trained for years to reach Olympic-level competition, and that work was rendered meaningless when the CIA transferred his brain into a goldfish. Klaus's athletic achievements now exist only as memories, since he can never compete again or even move his body in the ways he trained to master. This loss of life purpose adds another dimension to Klaus's tragedy beyond just the physical transformation. Klaus's ongoing presence in the Smith household as a talking goldfish serves as a constant reminder of the CIA's willingness to destroy individual lives for government objectives. Stan works for the CIA and lives with Klaus, creating a daily juxtaposition between Stan's loyalty to the agency and the visible evidence of that agency's cruelty in the form of Klaus. This dynamic is rarely addressed directly in episodes, but exists as subtext throughout the series. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, the Smith family has accidentally ended the world multiple times. The Smith family has accidentally caused multiple apocalyptic events throughout American Dad's run, with their careless actions leading to the end of civilization, worldwide devastation, and the death of billions. These apocalypses demonstrate how the show uses extreme consequences to highlight the family's selfishness and poor decision-making while maintaining its dark comedy tone through increasingly absurd scenarios where minor mistakes spiral into extinction-level catastrophes. The first major apocalypse happens in Rapture's Delight, which aired on the 13th of December, 2009, as Season 5, Episode 9. This Christmas episode begins with the Smith family attending church on Christmas morning. Stan is frustrated dealing with people who only attend religious services on holidays, viewing them as hypocrites who don't take faith seriously. To relieve Stan's stress, Francine has sex with Stan in the janitor's closet while church services are happening. This act of having sex in a church during Christmas services triggers the biblical rapture, causing the world to end immediately. The rapture leaves Stan, Francine, and Roger on Earth, while Haley and Steve float up to heaven. The three characters left behind discover what the coming days will be like as the world transforms into the apocalyptic tribulation period described in biblical prophecy. Steve and Haley are escorted to their own personal heavens by an angel named Michelle. Steve discovers that his personal heaven involves being a virgin riding a unicorn that poops pepper jack cheeseburgers, which represents Steve's ideal paradise based on his personality and desires. Stan discovers that Jesus will be appearing on Earth and tries to blame Francine for them getting left behind. Stan argues that Francine's actions caused them to miss the rapture, refusing to take responsibility for his own participation in having sex in the church. Francine becomes angry at Stan's attempt to blame her and leaves him. Francine meets the real Jesus in a diner, and they apparently form a romantic connection. Stan discovers that the Jesus he had been following was fake, but when Stan tries to make up with Francine, she has already decided to leave Stan for the actual Jesus Christ. The episode jumps forward through 7 years of the tribulation period. Stan has become a bitter, scarred warrior who no longer shows the enthusiasm he once had for fighting on Christ's behalf. Jesus seeks Stan out to deliver news that Francine has been captured by the Antichrist. Stan reluctantly agrees to help rescue Francine, but only in exchange for being raptured to heaven afterward. They need Roger to use his spaceship to fly them to New York and the United Nations building to confront the Antichrist. They manage to repower Roger's spaceship using the Golden Turd, which is a recurring magical artifact in the series. Stan, Jesus, and Roger rescue Francine from the Antichrist captivity, but they fall into a trap. They manage to escape from the trap, but Stan is mortally injured during the escape. Francine discovers that Stan still keeps their wedding rings, and this discovery makes her realize that Stan still loved her throughout their separation. Stan dies in an explosion and is sent to heaven. When Stan is guided to his personalized heaven, it appears as his home exactly as it was at the beginning of the episode. The only difference is that Klaus's dead fish body is mounted on a plaque hanging on the wall, suggesting that Klaus died at some point during the tribulation. Rapture's Delight establishes that Stan and Francine's decision to have sex in a church janitor's closet during Christmas services was enough to trigger the biblical end of the world. The episode treats this as a direct consequence of their actions, implying that their specific sin at that specific moment caused God to initiate the rapture. This apocalypse kills or damns billions of people who were left behind when the righteous were taken to heaven, and it transforms Earth into a war zone where the Antichrist rules and suffering is universal. The second major apocalypse happens in Hot Water, which aired on the 25th of September 2011 as Season 7, Episode 1. This episode begins with Stan feeling stressed out by his family and his obligations. Principal Lewis takes Stan shopping for a hot tub at the Little Shop of Hot Tubs. Stan is drawn to a used hot tub in the store's back room. The store owner, Marguerite, tries to talk Stan out of purchasing this particular tub, but Stan decides he wants it anyway and buys it despite the warning. At first, Stan and Francine enjoy the tub and have relaxing sex in it. The hot tub seems like a normal purchase that improves their lives. Marguerite later reconsiders his position on the tub when he gets a chance to party with Principal Lewis and Stan in the hot tub. Francine eventually chases Marguerite and Lewis away from the house. Francine starts to worry about the effect that spending all his time in the tub is having on Stan. She orders Stan to stay out of the hot tub. That night, the hot tub calls to Stan, revealing that it is somehow alive and can communicate. Stan returns to the hot tub, which annoys Francine. Francine gives Stan an ultimatum, forcing him to choose between the hot tub or her. Stan chooses the hot tub over his wife. Francine packs up the rest of the family and leaves for her parents' house, abandoning Stan to his hot tub obsession. Marguerite becomes annoyed by his feelings about the hot tub and decides to investigate its history. Marguerite discovers that the hot tub came alive after being struck by lightning. The hot tub killed its original owner and later escaped from a mental hospital where it had apparently been contained. This backstory establishes that the hot tub is a sentient, murderous entity that Stan brought into his home. Marguerite calls Principal Lewis, and they go to Stan's house to warn him about the hot tub's dangerous history. The hot tub swallows Principal Lewis, killing him by pulling him into the water. Marguerite tries to escape, but the hot tub fills his car with water, causing Marguerite to crash into a tree. Marguerite is killed in the crash. The hot tub then calls Francine on the phone and imitates Stan's voice to draw her back to the house. Stan arrives home just after Francine leaves her parents' house. Stan discovers the deception when he realizes the hot tub called Francine, pretending to be him. Stan rushes home just as the hot tub swallows Francine, pulling her into the water to kill her. Stan tries to fight the hot tub and recover Francine from inside it, but Stan is killed in the fight. The episode ends with Stan dying, leaving the sentient, murderous hot tub victorious. Hot Water is a musical episode where songs advance the plot and reveal character emotions. The episode ends with Stan's death, which represents a total failure where the hot tub wins and kills the main character. This ending is unusual for American Dad because most episodes reset the status quo by the end. Hot Water leaves Stan dead with no resolution, creating an apocalyptic ending for Stan's life, if not for the entire world. The third and most extensive apocalypse happens in The 200, which aired on the 28th of March 2016 as Season 11, Episode 10. This episode serves as the show's 200th episode and depicts the aftermath of a catastrophic event that destroyed civilization. The episode opens in the wasteland of Langley Falls, with Stan wandering through ruins covered in tattoos. Stan passes warnings about the 200 as he moves through the devastated landscape. Stan returns to the ruins of his home, avoiding strangers until he runs into Principal Lewis scavenging in his kitchen. Stan explains that he was in South America during the blast that destroyed everything. Stan begins telling stories about his various tattoos, with each tattoo representing a memory from before the apocalypse. Stan tells Principal Lewis about his falcon tattoo. In a flashback, Stan, Klaus, and Haley go fishing together. They get into an argument instead of spending quality time together. Haley attempts to free the fish they caught, and the fish are immediately eaten by falcons. Stan mentions that his tattoo serves as a reminder of that event. As Stan tries to turn his back on Lewis, Lewis tries to eat Stan. Stan escapes and runs into Greg, another survivor. Lewis chops off one of Greg's legs for food, establishing that cannibalism is common in this post-apocalyptic world. Stan carries Greg while searching for his family. Greg tells Stan that his family headed to a New Haven safe zone. Greg asks about another tattoo that looks like a doily, and Stan recalls a father-son mud run obstacle course. During the mud run flashback, Stan's constant nagging at Steve to keep up causes Steve to become injured throughout the course. Steve's leg gets broken by the end, and Steve spends his recovery time knitting doilies. Stan and Greg encounter a trap set by scavengers, but the scavengers flee when they believe the 200 are coming. Roger appears and reveals he was fooling the scavengers into thinking the 200 were approaching. Roger agrees to help Stan find his family. Stan, Roger, and Greg hop onto a flaming train to avoid a pack of wild dogs chasing them. They think they lost Greg during the boarding, but Greg manages to haul himself onto the train despite missing a leg. In the dark train car, Roger tries to avoid discussing Stan's tattoos, but Stan launches into a story about a trash can tattoo. The flashback shows Stan forgetting to take out the trash for Francine. Francine determinedly tries to chase down the trash truck, but loses all the trash in the process. When Greg is attacked on the train by a savage survivor, Roger tosses Stan out of the moving train. Greg manages to join Stan and Roger again, despite being thrown from the train. The three travelers arrive at the New Haven safe zone and find the entire area burnt out. They believe all the occupants are dead. Roger finds Francine's locket among the ruins, suggesting Francine died in the destruction of the safe zone. Principal Lewis appears and chops off Greg's other leg, leaving Greg without any legs. Lewis captures Stan and Roger and transports them in a cage. Stan mentally shuts down from grief and despair. Stan tells about his trip to South America and reveals another tattoo related to that journey. Stan regrets not giving his family a proper goodbye before he left. Stan believes his entire family is dead and begs to be killed. Just as Lewis pulls a gun to shoot Stan, Haley knocks the gun away using a trained falcon. Steve nets Lewis in an oversized doily, using the skills from Stan's previous flashback stories. The cart carrying Stan and Roger rolls away and almost goes over a cliff. Both Steve and Haley are unable to stop the cart from going over the edge. Francine appears and adds her muscle strength from hauling trash cans to pull the cart back from the cliff edge. The Smith family is reunited, but Lewis whistles for backup. The savage survivors of Langley Falls appear in response to Lewis's whistle. 200 clones of Roger also arrive, revealing what the 200 actually refers to. Roger recalls a trip to Langley Quantum Labs where he wandered into a Hadron Collider. The Hadron Collider accident caused all of Roger's personas to be released as physical clones, and this event caused worldwide devastation that destroyed civilization. The two groups of Roger clones and savage survivors rush toward each other. Neither group is friendly to the Smith family, creating a situation where the Smiths are surrounded by enemies from all sides. Just before the family is killed, Jeff arrives riding Klaus, who has transformed into a dragon. Jeff and Dragon Klaus save the family from the approaching armies. The episode ends with Stan as an old man telling the story of these events to his grandchildren, with his last tattoo depicting Jeff and Klaus's rescue. The 200 reveals that Roger accidentally destroyed the world by wandering into a Hadron Collider at Langley Quantum Labs. This careless action released all of Roger's personas as physical clones, who then devastated the entire planet. The episode depicts a post-apocalyptic wasteland where cannibalism is common, resources are scarce, and civilization has completely collapsed. The 200 Roger clones apparently caused enough destruction to end modern society and reduce humanity to savage tribes fighting over scraps. The Hadron Collider accident represents another example of Roger's carelessness, causing massive consequences. Roger was apparently wandering around a scientific facility and stumbled into active equipment without understanding or caring about what would happen. This casual disregard for safety protocols released 200 physical copies of Roger's different personas, each one apparently possessing the ability to cause destruction. The episode suggests these Roger clones fought each other and normal humans, creating a worldwide conflict that killed billions and destroyed all infrastructure. These three apocalypses share common elements that reveal patterns in how the Smith family ends the world. Each apocalypse starts with a selfish or thoughtless action by a family member. Stan and Francine having sex in a church triggers the rapture. Stan buying a murderous hot tub despite warnings leads to multiple deaths. Roger, wandering into a Hadron Collider, releases 200 destructive clones. None of these actions were done with malicious intent to destroy the world, but the family's casual disregard for consequences creates catastrophic results. The show treats these apocalypses with dark comedy rather than genuine horror. Characters die or the world ends, but the tone remains absurd and humorous. Rapture's delight includes musical numbers and jokes about Steve's heaven involving unicorn poop. Hot Water is entirely a musical with songs about Stan's hot tub addiction. The 200 features Stan covered in tattoos, telling increasingly silly flashback stories while the world has ended. This comedic framing prevents the apocalypses from feeling truly dark despite depicting the deaths of billions. The Smith family rarely faces lasting consequences for ending the world. Rapture's delight ends with Stan in heaven, achieving a happy ending despite causing the rapture. Hot Water ends with Stan's death, but subsequent episodes show Stan alive again with no explanation. The 200 ends with Stan as an old man having survived the apocalypse and having grandchildren, suggesting life eventually recovered. The show's episodic nature means these apocalypses don't permanently affect future episodes, allowing the family to keep accidentally destroying civilization without learning from their mistakes. These apocalypses also demonstrate the show's willingness to depict extreme consequences for minor actions. Having sex in a church janitor's closet seems like a relatively minor sin that might warrant embarrassment or punishment, but in American Dad, it triggers the biblical end times. Buying a hot tub despite warnings seems like poor judgment, but not typically a fatal mistake, yet it results in a murderous appliance, killing multiple people. Walking into scientific equipment seems dangerous, but not world-ending, yet it releases 200 destructive clones who devastate the planet. The massive gap between action and consequence creates the show's dark humor. The family's inability to prevent these apocalypses reveals their fundamental character flaws. Stan's stubbornness and refusal to listen to warnings leads him to buy the murderous hot tub and choose it over his family. Stan and Francine's inability to control their sexual urges causes them to have sex in a church during services, triggering the rapture. Roger's carelessness and tendency to wander into places he doesn't belong causes the Hadron Collider accident. These personality traits that cause minor problems in regular episodes create extinction-level events when given the right circumstances. The show also uses these apocalypses to explore religious and scientific themes through absurdist comedy. Rapture's Delight depicts the biblical rapture and tribulation as literal events that happen because two people had sex in a church. The episode treats Christian eschatology as real within the show's universe, while also making jokes about it. The 200 uses quantum physics and cloning as the mechanism for ending the world, taking real scientific concepts and pushing them to absurd extremes. These apocalypses allow the show to engage with big ideas about religion and science while maintaining its irreverent comedic tone. The survival of certain characters through the apocalypses creates additional dark comedy. Klaus's dead fish body appears mounted on a plaque in Stan's personal heaven, suggesting Klaus did not survive the tribulation. Principal Lewis becomes a cannibal who chops off people's legs for food in the post-Roger clone apocalypse. Greg loses both legs to Lewis's cannibalism, but continues to survive and follow Stan around. These character fates demonstrate how the show uses extreme suffering for comedic effect while maintaining the apocalypse premise. The Smith family's role in ending the world multiple times positions them as one of television's most destructive families, despite being portrayed as relatively normal suburbanites. Most sitcom families cause problems that are contained within their community or affect a limited number of people. The Smith family accidentally triggers extinction events that kill most of humanity and destroy civilization. This extreme escalation represents American Dad's approach to comedy, where normal family conflicts are pushed to their absolute extreme to generate humor from the absurdity of the situations. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, Terry and Greg are one of TV's first openly gay animated couples, and they even adopt a daughter together. Terry Bates and Greg Corbin represent American Dad's groundbreaking portrayal of a same-sex couple living as normal neighbors to the ultra-conservative Smith family. Their relationship serves as an ongoing challenge to Stan's prejudices while depicting a loving, stable partnership that exists in direct contrast to Stan's initial beliefs about homosexuality. The couple's journey to parenthood through surrogacy creates one of the show's most significant storylines, examining family values, reproductive rights, and what actually makes someone a good parent. Terry and Greg appear throughout American Dad as Stan's next-door neighbors in Langley Falls, Virginia. They are an openly gay couple who own their home together and maintain a normal suburban lifestyle. Greg works as a news reporter, appearing frequently on local television broadcasts. Terry's occupation varies across episodes, but he is consistently portrayed as Greg's domestic partner and equal in their relationship. The two men live together as a married couple in all practical senses, navigating the challenges of homeownership, neighborhood relations, and dealing with Stan's frequently hostile behavior toward their sexuality. Stan's relationship with Terry and Greg evolves significantly over the course of the series, though Stan never fully abandons his conservative views on homosexuality. In early episodes, Stan displays open hostility toward his gay neighbors and actively works against their interests. Stan believes homosexuality is a choice and that gay people are inherently problematic for society. These beliefs create ongoing conflict between Stan and his neighbors, though Terry and Greg typically respond to Stan's prejudice with patience rather than matching his hostility. They attempt to maintain friendly neighbor relations despite Stan's frequently offensive behavior and comments. The most significant storyline involving Terry and Greg happens in Surrogate, which aired on the 2nd of December 2007 as Season 3, Episode 7. This episode begins with Greg and Terry making an announcement after what the episode describes as a blissful morning start. They reveal that they would like to have a baby through a surrogate mother. This announcement creates different reactions from different characters. Stan is horrified at the thought of Greg and Terry having a child together. Stan's horror stems from his belief that gay people should not raise children and that allowing them to become parents goes against natural family structures. Greg and Terry explain that they are having trouble deciding on a surrogate mother for their baby. This difficulty in finding someone willing to carry their child highlights the challenges same-sex couples faced in starting families during this period. Francine volunteers to have a baby for them when she hears about their struggle to find a surrogate. Francine's decision to become their surrogate comes from her desire to help her neighbors and from her more accepting views on homosexuality compared to Stan. Francine understands that Greg and Terry would be good parents and wants to assist them in starting their family. Francine hides her pregnancy from Stan because she knows Stan will react badly to the news. Francine goes through the early stages of pregnancy while keeping it secret from her husband, imagining the worst possible scenario when Stan eventually discovers what she has done. Stan finds out about Francine's pregnancy when Francine's doctor calls the house. The doctor's call reveals not only that Francine is pregnant, but also that she is serving as a surrogate for Greg and Terry. Stan's Republican blood boils when he learns this information, meaning Stan becomes extremely angry and agitated about the situation. Haley chastises Stan about the baby's well-being, pointing out that Stan's anger and prejudice should not affect an innocent child. Haley's intervention forces Stan to reconsider his immediate reaction. Stan decides to work with Francine during the pregnancy, despite his strong objections to Greg and Terry becoming parents. This decision represents Stan attempting to support his wife, even though he fundamentally disagrees with what she is doing. Stan's cooperation during the pregnancy does not indicate that he has changed his mind about gay people raising children, but rather that he is trying to maintain his marriage while dealing with a situation he cannot change. When the baby is born, Stan's cooperation ends immediately. Stan kidnaps the baby girl and heads to the Nebraska border. Stan specifically chooses Nebraska because gay couples have no rights in that state at the time. Stan's plan involves taking the baby to a jurisdiction where Greg and Terry would have no legal standing to claim custody or parental rights. This kidnapping represents Stan's most extreme action against his neighbors and demonstrates how far Stan is willing to go to prevent what he views as an improper family situation. Stan finds himself supported by gay bashers during his journey to Nebraska. These individuals share Stan's prejudice and believe Stan is doing the right thing by preventing Greg and Terry from raising the child. Stan is pursued by gay truckers who are trying to stop the kidnapping and return the baby to her intended parents. This pursuit creates a chase scenario where Stan must evade people trying to rescue the kidnapped infant. The episode frames this as a conflict between two groups with opposing views on gay parenting rights. Stan finds refuge at a farm during his journey to Nebraska. Stan believes this farm will be a safe place where he can hide with the kidnapped baby. The farm turns out to be run by a lesbian couple and their children. This revelation shocks Stan because he assumed the farm would be operated by people who shared his conservative values. Stan discovers that the lesbian couple has multiple children who they are raising together. Stan decides to kidnap the lesbian couple's children as well, expanding his mission from preventing Greg and Terry from having one child to rescuing all children being raised by same-sex couples. The children at the lesbian farm act the same as any other children. They play normally, behave appropriately, and show no signs of being damaged or negatively affected by being raised by two mothers. Stan observes these children and realizes that they are developing into normal, healthy kids despite being raised in a non-traditional family structure. This observation forces Stan to confront his assumptions about gay parents. Stan sees that he was wrong about children raised by same-sex couples being inherently damaged or improperly socialized. Stan gives all the children back after his realization. Stan returns the baby to Greg and Terry and allows the lesbian couple's children to go home. This action represents Stan acknowledging that his beliefs about gay parents were incorrect and that his kidnapping was unjustified. However, Stan's change of heart is limited to recognizing that children can be raised successfully by same-sex couples, not necessarily accepting homosexuality itself or fully supporting gay rights. As punishment for kidnapping the children, Greg and Terry put a restraining order on Stan. This legal action prevents Stan from coming near the baby or approaching Greg and Terry's property. The restraining order serves as a consequence for Stan's criminal behavior and protects Greg, Terry, and their new daughter from future interference. Greg and Terry allow Francine and the lesbian family to play with the baby in the park despite the restraining order against Stan. They recognize that Francine was helpful during the pregnancy and surrogacy process and that she deserves to have a relationship with the baby she carried. Greg and Terry also let Stan come to the park on the condition that he stay far enough away to comply with the restraining order. This arrangement allows Stan to see the baby from a distance while ensuring he cannot interfere with Greg and Terry's parenting. The episode ends with this compromise, where Stan must watch from afar as others interact with the baby, serving as ongoing punishment for his kidnapping while allowing him some minimal presence in the situation. The episode includes a subplot where Steve and Roger pull a prank that pushes Klaus over the edge. Klaus becomes extremely angry about the prank, making Steve and Roger fear their every move. They become a pair of Howard Hughes-like recluses, hiding in their rooms and refusing to come out because they are terrified of Klaus's potential revenge. After hiding for 9 months, which is the same length of time as Francine's pregnancy in the main plot, Steve and Roger decide to beg Klaus's forgiveness. They discover that Klaus had completely forgotten about the incident until they reminded him by apologizing. Klaus immediately vows vengeance again once his memory is refreshed. Out of fright, Roger slams a stack of books on Klaus's bowl, trapping Klaus underneath and rendering him harmless. Surrogate establishes several important facts about Terry and Greg's family. They have a daughter who was carried by Francine as their surrogate. The baby is biologically related to one of them, though the episode does not specify whether Greg or Terry provided the genetic material. Francine carried the pregnancy to term and gave birth to the baby, then turned custody over to Greg and Terry as planned. The baby is legally their daughter, and they have full parental rights despite Stan's attempts to prevent this. The episode also explores Stan's evolving views on homosexuality and gay parenting. Stan begins the episode believing that gay people should not be allowed to raise children under any circumstances. Stan is willing to commit kidnapping to prevent Greg and Terry from becoming parents. By the end of the episode, Stan has seen evidence that contradicts his beliefs, specifically children raised by a lesbian couple who appear completely normal and well-adjusted. This experience does not eliminate Stan's prejudice entirely, but it does force him to acknowledge that his most extreme fears about gay parenting are unfounded. Greg and Terry's relationship continues throughout the series after they become parents. They raise their daughter together while maintaining their roles as Stan's neighbors. The show depicts them as competent, loving parents who provide a stable home for their child. Their daughter appears in subsequent episodes as a normal, happy child being raised in a two-father household. The show does not depict any negative consequences from having gay parents, instead portraying Greg and Terry's family as functionally equivalent to traditional families in terms of child development and family dynamics. Stan's restraining order becomes a running element in later episodes. Stan must maintain distance from Greg and Terry's property and cannot directly interact with their family without violating the court order. This legal consequence creates ongoing limitations on Stan's ability to interfere with his neighbors' lives. The restraining order serves as a permanent reminder of Stan's kidnapping and his past attempts to prevent Greg and Terry from having a family. The surrogacy arrangement itself highlights the challenges same-sex couples face in starting families. Greg and Terry could not conceive a child together naturally and needed assistance from a surrogate mother. They struggled to find someone willing to carry their baby, indicating that surrogacy for gay couples faced social stigma and practical obstacles. Francine's willingness to serve as their surrogate represented an act of significant generosity and acceptance. Francine carried another couple's child for 9 months, went through pregnancy and childbirth, and then gave the baby to Greg and Terry as intended. The episode aired in 2007, during a period when same-sex marriage was not yet legal nationwide in the United States and when gay parenting rights varied significantly by state. Stan's plan to take the baby to Nebraska, where gay couples had no rights, reflected real legal disparities that existed at the time. Some states recognized same-sex parents and protected their custody rights, while other states explicitly denied legal recognition to same-sex couples and their families. This legal patchwork meant that a child's legal status and parental rights could change simply by crossing state lines. Greg and Terry's successful surrogacy and their ability to legally adopt their daughter represents a victory for gay rights within the show's universe. Despite Stan's opposition and his attempt at kidnapping, Greg and Terry ultimately gain full legal custody of their daughter. The court system recognizes them as legitimate parents with enforceable rights, including the ability to obtain a restraining order against someone who threatened their family. This legal recognition validates their family structure and provides protection against future interference. The show's portrayal of Greg and Terry as normal neighbors with a normal family life serves to normalize same-sex relationships and gay parenting for viewers. By depicting them as ordinary people dealing with ordinary life challenges like starting a family, the show presents homosexuality as a natural variation of human relationships rather than as something threatening or abnormal. Greg and Terry are not defined solely by their sexuality, but are full characters with jobs, hobbies, friendships, and family relationships that extend beyond their identity as a gay couple. Stan's ultimate acceptance that Greg and Terry can successfully raise a child represents character growth despite Stan maintaining his conservative political views. Stan does not become pro-gay rights or abandon his Republican ideology. Instead, Stan learns to separate his abstract political beliefs from the concrete reality of his neighbors being good parents. Stan can acknowledge that Greg and Terry's daughter is thriving in their care while still maintaining his general opposition to homosexuality in other contexts. This nuanced position reflects how real people often hold seemingly contradictory views, where personal experience conflicts with ideological positions. The restraining order also serves as a consequence for Stan's actions that extends beyond the specific episode. Many sitcoms reset their status quo by each episode's end, erasing consequences and allowing characters to repeat the same mistakes. The restraining order creates a permanent change in Stan's relationship with Greg and Terry that affects future episodes. Stan cannot simply forget about the kidnapping or pretend it never happened because the legal system has imposed lasting restrictions on his behavior. This consequence adds weight to Stan's actions and demonstrates that some mistakes cannot be easily undone. Francine's role as surrogate creates a unique bond between her and Greg and Terry's daughter. Francine carried the baby, gave birth to her, and then allowed Greg and Terry to raise her as their own child. This arrangement means Francine has a biological connection to the baby through the pregnancy process, even though she is not genetically related. Francine's continued involvement with the baby after birth, as shown when she plays with the baby in the park, suggests that Greg and Terry recognize Francine's contribution and allow her to maintain some relationship with the child she carried. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, Roger's body can regenerate limbs and organs almost instantly. Roger's body can regenerate limbs and organs almost instantly. Roger's alien physiology includes the extraordinary ability to regenerate limbs and organs, a capability that manifests in multiple episodes throughout American Dad's run. This regenerative power allows Roger to survive injuries that would be fatal to humans and demonstrates that his species possesses biological abilities far beyond normal Earth life forms. The show establishes Roger's regeneration through specific episodes where he loses body parts and later recovers them through natural healing processes. The most explicit demonstration of Roger's regenerative abilities appears in Ortron Trail, which aired on the 30th of April 2018 as Season 13, Episode 12. This episode centers on Roger becoming traumatized after playing the Oregon Trail computer game with Steve. Roger witnesses the text box deaths of various family members in the game and realizes that he will eventually outlive the entire Smith family due to his alien nature and extended lifespan. This realization becomes unbearable for Roger because he deeply cares about the Smiths despite his often selfish behavior. Roger's mood does not improve even during an expensive family photo shoot where he confesses his worries about outliving the family. A car accident during the photo shoot day seemingly claims Roger's life when Stan's horseplay causes a fiery crash. The family believes Roger has perished in the explosion. 1 year later, the Smith family has not moved on in healthy ways from Roger's apparent death. Stan has grown a mustache, Haley has become heavily muscled and works as a street fighter. Francine has changed her hair and clothing to a much more depressing look and adopted a light southern accent, and Klaus has turned Roger's attic space into a bodega and become overwhelmed with paranoia about shoplifters. Roger did not actually die in the car accident. He faked his death and has been living on the road as a motorcycle-riding renegade, calling himself Renegade. Steve becomes suspicious when someone charges $31,000 worth of motorcycles to Stan's credit card in Missouri. Steve also discovers that a single man calling himself Renegade crashed 6 motorcycles within a 4-mile stretch outside of Street Louis during the same week. Steve deduces that Roger must still be alive and that he is following the route of the Oregon Trail. Steve tracks Roger down to a diner where Roger is living as his renegade persona. When Roger goes to a bike shop to get his motorcycle adjusted, he tells the shop owner to thank them again for adjusting the handlebars. Roger then reveals a critical detail about his physical condition by saying his arms are still regenerating. The bike shop owner responds casually that they get that all the time, treating Roger's regenerating arms as a normal occurrence rather than something shocking or unusual. This exchange establishes several important facts about Roger's regenerative abilities. Roger's arms were blown off in the car explosion that he used to fake his death. The explosion severely injured Roger and caused him to lose both arms. However, Roger's alien biology allowed him to survive this catastrophic injury and begin growing new arms to replace the ones he lost. By the time Roger visits the bike shop, approximately 1 year has passed since the explosion, and his arms have not fully regenerated yet. This indicates that Roger's regeneration process takes significant time rather than happening instantly. The bike shop owner's casual response suggests that other members of Roger's species have visited this particular bike shop and also mentioned regenerating body parts. This implies that Roger's regenerative ability is a standard trait of his alien species rather than a unique power that only Roger possesses. The bike shop owner treats regeneration as a known phenomenon that they encounter regularly enough to not find it surprising or noteworthy. Roger explains to Steve that he faked his death because playing Oregon Trail stirred up memories of the Meekers, who were Roger's first family when he arrived on Earth in the 1800s during the actual Oregon Trail era. Roger lived with the Meekers and fit in fine at first, but due to the awful conditions of that historical period, they all died from various terrible causes. Seeing a video game based on the route his first family died on made Roger realize he would outlive the Smith family too, forcing him to emotionally and physically retreat from the relationship by faking his death. Roger's regenerative abilities appear again in Camp Campawanda, which aired on the 5th of June 2017 as Season 12, Episode 13. This episode features Haley and Jeff celebrating their wedding anniversary. Jeff fails to get tickets to Burning Man, disappointing Haley. Roger decides to surprise them by building his own version of Burning Man in the Smith family's backyard. Stan initially criticizes the noise and clutter in the backyard, but loosens up when he decides to party with Francine. Klaus gets stoned on Roger's homemade acid that accidentally falls into his fishbowl. Haley becomes suspicious of Roger's motivation for organizing this elaborate anniversary celebration because Roger typically has selfish ulterior motives for his apparently generous actions. Haley drags Jeff along to investigate what Roger is really planning. When Roger presents them with a luxury tent to enjoy their anniversary, Haley and Jeff spy a spot of blood that Roger lamely tries to excuse. Investigating Roger's attic, they find a phone number for a medical clinic in El Salvador and a bloodied operating table. Haley and Jeff fear that Roger intends to knock them unconscious and harvest their organs to sell on the black market. They plant dummies in the tent to trick Roger. When Roger slips into the tent with a cooler and a knife, Haley and Jeff confront him, believing they have caught Roger in the act of attempting to steal their organs. Roger reveals that he was actually trying to do something nice, purely to be nice, without any ulterior motive. The organs Roger intended to harvest were his own organs, not Haley and Jeff's organs. Roger had been removing his own organs and selling them to pay for the expensive Burning Man celebration he was throwing for Haley and Jeff's anniversary. This revelation establishes that Roger can survive having his organs removed from his body. Roger was walking around and functioning normally, despite having sold multiple internal organs. The episode later shows Roger's organs voluntarily returning to his body on their own. Roger's organs sing a song called "Let's All Go to the Body" as they return to Roger's body. The organs are shown as sentient entities that can move independently and make their own decisions about returning to Roger. The organs survived outside Roger's body for an extended period and then chose to come back and reintegrate themselves into Roger's body without requiring surgical intervention. This demonstrates that Roger's organs possess their own consciousness and can exist separately from Roger's body, while maintaining the ability to return and reconnect themselves. The American Dad Wiki specifically states that Roger's organs can survive and voluntarily return on their own, referencing the events of Camp Campawanda as the canon source for this information. This establishes Roger's regenerative abilities extend beyond just regrowing lost limbs. Roger's entire internal organ system can function outside his body, survive independently, and then return to his body and resume normal function. Another episode that demonstrates Roger's unusual physiology is A Smith in the Hand from Season 2, Episode 12. This episode reveals that Roger has pockets in his flesh that he can keep things in and through, which his internal organs can be accessed. When Roger's pancreas is removed in this episode, it becomes a vicious beast, showing that Roger's organs have properties completely unlike human organs. The pancreas acts as a living creature with its own aggressive behavior rather than simply being an inert biological organ. These various episodes establish that Roger's regenerative abilities include several distinct capabilities. Roger can regenerate entire limbs after they are blown off in explosions. This regeneration process takes approximately 1 year to fully complete, as shown by Roger's arms still regenerating a year after the car explosion. Roger can survive having his internal organs removed from his body. Roger's organs can exist independently outside his body for extended periods. Roger's organs possess their own consciousness and can voluntarily return to his body on their own without medical intervention. Roger's organs can reintegrate themselves into his body and resume normal function after being separated. Roger's regeneration appears to have some limitations based on what the show reveals. Roger mentions in Exquisite Corpses that he can be killed by cutting off his head, suggesting that decapitation would prevent regeneration. Roger's regeneration takes significant time rather than happening instantly, as demonstrated by his arms requiring a year to fully regenerate. Roger experiences pain and limitation while his body parts are regenerating, as shown by his need to adjust motorcycle handlebars to accommodate his still regenerating arms. The show also establishes other aspects of Roger's unusual alien physiology beyond regeneration. Roger is stated to be over 1,600 years old as of Season 5's Great Space Roaster, demonstrating his species has an extremely extended lifespan. Roger reveals in Little Bonnie Ramirez that he believes he has about 9,000 years of life expectancy remaining, meaning his species can live for more than 12,000 years total. Roger's species is 60% electricity, according to The Life and Times of Stan Smith, and Roger demonstrates the ability to send electrical shocks strong enough to kill and revive humans. Roger can survive the vacuum of space, as shown in Great Space Roaster. Roger can breathe underwater, as demonstrated in Funnyish Games. Roger's skin appears fireproof based on incidents in Big Trouble in Little Langley and Stan's Food Restaurant, where he is set on fire and blasted with a blowtorch but survives, though his skin temporarily darkens from these incidents. Roger can survive extremely cold conditions, having declared that his planet's ecosystem is 400 degrees colder than Earth in The Most Adequate Christmas Ever. Roger exhibits super speed during Jenny from de Block when he uses this ability to fake a death. Roger demonstrates super strength in The Wrestler when he kicks a tree across a yard. Roger can enter people's dreams, as shown in Enter Stanman. Roger can record people's memories through sexual contact, as revealed in Roger and Me. Roger secretes xenoplasm from his body every 7 hours, a process shown in multiple episodes, including the pilot, Roger Codger, and Office Spaceman. When Roger is stressed, his body can grow large tumors that, when removed, become fully sentient organisms themselves. This ability is demonstrated in Persona Assistant, where Roger develops a tumor on his head. The Smith family gets the tumor removed, and it becomes Rogu, a homunculus that Roger's species developed to act as stand-in doubles when feeling overworked. Rogu becomes a recurring character with his own personality, abilities, and storylines. This demonstrates that Roger's biology can create entirely new life forms through tumor growth. Roger's blood color varies inconsistently across different episodes, appearing as purple in One Little Word and There Will Be Bad Blood, yellow in Klaus's Fantasy in Irregarding Steve, and red like human blood in Season's Beatings, Ricky Spanish, Faking Bad, Stangen Dan Deliver, and Twinanigans. This inconsistency might represent continuity errors in the show's production, or could suggest that Roger's blood color changes based on different physiological states or circumstances. Roger states in Threat Levels that his species is immune to all human ailments. However, Stan mentions in the same episode that Roger still got a cold sore, creating some contradiction about whether Roger can contract human diseases. This contradiction might indicate that Roger exaggerated his immunity, or that certain minor human ailments can still affect his species, despite general immunity to major diseases. The regeneration abilities make Roger extremely difficult to kill or permanently injure. Roger can survive catastrophic trauma that would instantly kill humans, including having both arms blown off, having multiple organs removed, being set on fire, and exposure to extreme cold or vacuum. Roger's body will eventually heal from these injuries and regenerate any lost parts, though the process takes considerable time. The only explicitly stated way to permanently kill Roger is decapitation, which presumably prevents his regenerative abilities from functioning. Roger's regenerative powers create interesting implications for his lifestyle and behavior. Roger can engage in extremely risky behavior, knowing that he will eventually heal from most injuries. Roger can sell his own organs for money because he knows they will return to his body later. Roger can fake his death by allowing himself to be severely injured in ways that would kill humans because he will regenerate afterward. Roger's extended lifespan combined with his regeneration means he has centuries or millennia ahead of him, making him functionally immortal from a human perspective. The Smith family's awareness of Roger's regenerative abilities varies across episodes. Sometimes they seem surprised by Roger's unusual abilities, while other times they treat his alien biology as normal and expected. This inconsistency likely reflects the show's episodic nature, where specific continuity details are not always maintained between episodes. However, the core fact that Roger can regenerate and survive extreme injuries remains consistent throughout the series. Roger's regeneration represents one of many ways American Dad uses science fiction elements to create comedy and enable outrageous plotlines. Roger's ability to regenerate allows the show to subject Roger to extreme violence and injury for comedic effect without permanently harming the character. Roger can be blown up, have his organs removed, or suffer other catastrophic injuries, and viewers know Roger will eventually recover. This removes the need for the show to explain how Roger survived or to deal with lasting consequences from his injuries. The regeneration also serves character development purposes by highlighting Roger's alien nature and the fundamental differences between Roger and the human Smith family. Roger's ability to regenerate and his extended lifespan create situations where Roger must confront his immortality and the reality that he will outlive everyone he cares about. Episodes like Ortron Trail use Roger's regeneration and longevity to explore themes of mortality, loss, and the pain of outliving loved ones. Roger's regenerative abilities place him among the most physically resilient characters in adult animated television. While many cartoon characters survive impossible injuries through cartoon logic, Roger's regeneration is explicitly explained as a biological capability of his alien species rather than unexplained cartoon physics. The show establishes specific rules and limitations for Roger's regeneration, such as the year-long time frame for regrowing arms and the vulnerability to decapitation. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, Stan's father Jack Smith was a jewel thief who even faked his own death. Stan's father Jack Smith was a jewel thief who faked his own death. Jack Smith represents one of American Dad's most complicated father figures, serving as Stan Smith's biological father who abandoned his family and lived a secret life as an international jewel thief. Jack's absence from Stan's childhood and his eventual reappearance create recurring storylines that explore themes of abandonment, masculinity, and the long-term psychological damage caused by absentee fathers. The show reveals Jack's criminal identity gradually across multiple episodes, with his true nature contradicting the heroic spy image Stan desperately wanted to believe about his absent father. Jack Smith walked out on Stan and Stan's mother when Stan was very young. The abandonment happened without warning or explanation, leaving Stan to grow up without a father figure during his formative years. Before Jack left, he displayed extreme apathy and neglect toward his young son. When Stan asked Jack to teach him how to ride a bicycle, Jack refused. This refusal had lasting consequences because Stan never learned to ride a bike as a child, creating insecurity and embarrassment that persisted into his adulthood. When Stan asked Jack to read to him, Jack replied, "Who the hell are you?" This response demonstrates Jack's complete lack of interest in his son or his basic responsibilities as a father. Stan's childhood without his father left him with significant developmental gaps and psychological issues. Stan grew up more effeminate in his actions, according to Jack's Back, which aired on the 15th of March 2009 as Season 4, Episode 13. Stan did not know how to do certain things that fathers typically teach their sons, such as riding bicycles or fishing. These skill gaps resulted directly from Jack's refusal to spend father-son time with Stan before abandoning him entirely. Stan's masculine insecurity and his extreme overcompensation through aggressive CIA work and ultra-conservative political views can be traced back to growing up without a male role model. Around the time of Stan and Francine's marriage, Jack left Stan again after briefly returning. Jack told Stan he was going on a mission, maintaining the pretense that he worked as some kind of secret operative. Stan desperately wanted to believe his father was a hero rather than accepting that Jack had simply abandoned him. This desire to see his father as admirable rather than as a deadbeat created the foundation for Stan's eventual deception of his own family. Stan decided to have someone pose as his father to trick his family for the next 20 years. Stan met a stranger at a Home Depot and convinced this man to pretend to be his father. Stan picked this fake father just 3 hours before his wedding to Francine, showing how desperate Stan was to present a normal family to his bride. This stranger, known to the family as Grandpa Smith, maintained the deception for 2 decades, attending family events and playing the role of Stan's father and Steve and Haley's grandfather. The fake father's death triggers the main events of Con Air, which aired on the 2nd of October 2005 as Season 1, Episode 11. The episode begins with Deputy Director Bullock telling Stan that the CIA found an Al-Qaeda training camp in remote Algeria. Stan is excited to participate in the mission, but Bullock tells Stan that because he is a family man, he must stay back in Langley Falls and book the team's flights instead of participating in field operations. This disappoints Stan, who wants to prove himself as an action-oriented agent rather than being relegated to desk work. Steve comes home with bigger news than Stan's work disappointment. Grandpa Smith is dead. The family holds a funeral for the man they believed was Stan's father. At the funeral, a helicopter appears overhead and a man jumps out, landing dramatically near the funeral service. Stan introduces this man to the family as Jack Smith, Stan's real father. The family is outraged that Stan hid this secret from them for 20 years. Stan reveals that the man they just buried was actually a stranger he hired to play his father, and Jack is his actual biological parent. Jack presents himself as a super suave spy who works for an organization called the Scarlet Alliance. Jack claims the Scarlet Alliance is more secret and more deadly than the CIA, and that everyone in the organization wears a turtleneck. This presentation appeals to Stan's desire to see his father as a hero and to have a father figure who embodies the masculine spy ideal that Stan admires. Roger immediately develops a boy crush on Jack, finding him charismatic and exciting. However, the other family members remain wary of Jack, sensing something suspicious about his sudden reappearance after decades of absence. Jack convinces Stan to quit his job at the CIA and work with him at the Scarlet Alliance instead. Francine is upset with Stan for being busy training with Jack for what Jack describes as a mission involving uranium, artwork, and terrorists. Stan eagerly participates in training with his father, thrilled to finally have the father-son relationship he always wanted. Jack takes Stan to a gun range and spends time with him, creating the bonding experiences that Stan never had as a child. The FBI arrives at the Smith household while Jack is staying with the family. 2 FBI agents tell Francine they are looking for an international jewel thief who may be in the area. The agents describe a man about 6 feet 2 inches tall, 65 years old, who sometimes leaps from a helicopter. Francine confirms she has seen someone matching that description. The agents continue describing the suspect, mentioning a salty demeanor and that he wears a turtleneck. Francine again confirms these details match Jack. The agents show Francine a mugshot of Jack wearing an obviously fake mustache as a disguise. Francine pretends not to recognize him, saying her father-in-law does not have a mustache, and the agents leave without suspecting Jack is in the house. Francine finds a suitcase in Jack's belongings that contains a fake mustache, confirming her suspicions about Jack's true identity. While Stan is exercising outside, Francine confronts Jack about his real identity as a jewel thief rather than a spy. Francine tells Jack that if he does not tell Stan the truth, she will reveal it herself. Jack lies to Stan by telling him that Francine is actually the spy and cannot be trusted. Stan believes his father over his wife, demonstrating how desperately Stan wants to maintain his idealized image of Jack as a hero. Stan tasers Francine and imprisons her in a clear plexiglass box in the basement, treating his own wife as an enemy spy based entirely on Jack's lies. Roger discovers Francine trapped in the basement and is about to release her when she explains that Jack told Stan she was a spy. Roger's man-crush on Jack overrides his loyalty to Francine, and Roger leaves Francine imprisoned rather than help her escape. This demonstrates how Jack's charisma and manipulation can turn even people who should know better against each other. Jack and Stan begin their supposed mission together. They break into the National Gallery of Art, with Jack claiming they need to stop terrorists from stealing uranium and artwork. Stan starts looking for uranium once they break into the vault, still believing they are on a legitimate intelligence operation. Jack ignores Stan's search for uranium and instead simply collects valuable jewels and artwork for himself. Stan realizes Francine was right and that Jack has been lying to him about being a spy. Stan tells Jack he is not going to run off to an island with stolen jewels. Jack locks Stan inside the vault and escapes with the stolen valuables, betraying his son and leaving him trapped. Stan manages to escape from the vault and catches up with Jack outside the museum. A chase ensues through the streets. Stan catches Jack before Jack can get away completely. Jack apologizes to Stan for betraying him, and Stan makes a decision that shows his continued desperate need for his father's approval. Stan takes the jewels from Jack, but lets Jack go free rather than turning him into authorities. Stan rushes home and apologizes to Francine for imprisoning her and believing Jack's lies over her truthful warnings. Con Air establishes Jack Smith's true identity as an international jewel thief who has been tracked by law enforcement for years. Jack carries around a suitcase with disguises, including fake mustaches that he uses to avoid detection. Jack is skilled at manipulation and lying, able to convince his own son to betray his wife and quit his job based entirely on false stories. Jack cares more about wealth and stealing than about his relationship with his son, as demonstrated by his willingness to betray and abandon Stan repeatedly. Jack's criminal career apparently spans decades based on the FBI agents' familiarity with him and their possession of his mugshot. The fake mustache in the mugshot suggests Jack has been arrested before and fingerprinted, creating a criminal record that law enforcement uses to track him. Jack mentions to Stan that he cannot go to prison because of what other inmates would do to his eye socket, revealing that Jack only has one functional eye. This vulnerability makes prison particularly dangerous for Jack, since other inmates might target his missing eye. Jack's skills as a jewel thief require significant expertise. Jack knows how to bypass museum security systems, break into safes, and execute heists without getting caught during the actual theft. Jack tells Stan that breaking into a safe is like making love to a woman, presenting himself as an experienced professional criminal. Stan's response that we should just pound on it for like 2 minutes creates uncomfortable comedy, while revealing Stan's sexual insecurity and his desperate attempts to impress his father with masculine bravado. The episode Jack's Back provides additional information about Jack's criminal history and his relationship with Stan. Steve signs Stan and himself up for a bicycle racing tournament, but Stan refuses to participate. Steve discovers that Stan never learned to ride a bike because Jack refused to teach him. Steve decides to reunite Stan with his father by luring Jack to the jail where Jack is serving his last sentence. This reveals that Jack has spent time in prison multiple times throughout his life. According to the American Dad Wiki, Jack has spent 20 to 40 years in prison total across his various sentences. After Stan and Jack reconcile, Stan paroles his father until Jack's next trial and brings him home. Stan remains uncertain about trusting Jack, especially since Jack was not present during Stan's childhood. Steve suggests that Stan, Jack, and Steve all go camping together to build their family relationship. Stan discovers that Jack is using Steve to appeal to Stan emotionally, so that Stan will provide a positive character reference for Jack during his upcoming trial. Stan gets angry at this manipulation and provokes Jack until Steve threatens to leave the house forever if they do not stop fighting. That same night, Steve shares his thoughts with Jack about wishing to run away from home. Jack agrees with the idea, and they steal Francine's car together. During their time together, Steve starts to find a father figure in Jack, viewing his grandfather as the male role model he wants to emulate. Jack feels guilty because he knows he is not the person Steve thinks he is. Jack understands that he failed Stan as a father, and that he is now manipulating Steve's emotions for his own benefit. Jack makes a moral decision and chooses to appear at his trial instead of running away with Steve. Jack tells Steve to get back home and spend time with Stan because Steve still might need his own father as a father figure rather than relying on Jack. This represents Jack's acknowledgement that despite his flaws and criminal history, Stan has been a more consistent parent to Steve than Jack ever was to Stan. When Stan finds out that Jack turned himself in rather than fleeing, Stan rushes to the courthouse to speak on Jack's behalf as a character witness. Stan's car breaks down on the way to the courthouse, leaving Stan with no other choice but to ride a bicycle to reach the trial in time. This forces Stan to overcome his fear and insecurity about riding bikes, directly confronting the psychological damage Jack caused by refusing to teach Stan this basic skill. Stan suppresses his fear and rides the bike to the courthouse despite never having properly learned. Stan arrives too late, and Jack is sentenced to 5 more years in prison. Steve consoles Stan by saying that Stan is a good son after all. Jack kicks Stan in the groin when Stan tries to hug him, and Stan passes this kick along to Steve, with Jack explaining that he needed to show dominance or other prisoners would eat him alive in jail. Jack's back demonstrates that Jack has some capacity for moral growth and self-awareness. Jack recognizes that he was never a good father to Stan, but wants Stan to be a good father to Steve. Jack willingly returns to prison rather than continuing to manipulate Steve and corrupt his grandson's moral development. However, Jack still cannot express genuine affection, even in this moment of sacrifice, instead kicking Stan and maintaining his tough criminal persona. Jack's criminal career continues in later episodes. In Ghost Dad, Jack is shown stealing O.J. Simpson's white Ford Bronco, engaging in a car chase with police. Jack crashes on the highway and is shot by a group of police officers, apparently dying from his wounds. This represents Jack's death by violence while committing yet another theft, showing that Jack never truly reformed despite his moments of moral clarity. Roger accidentally summons Jack's spirit back to the real world during a seance that was supposed to be fake. The seance Roger performed binds Jack's ghost to the Smith house, forcing Jack's spirit to haunt his family. The family finds Ghost Jack annoying and tries to figure out how to remove him from the house. Jack's presence as a ghost allows the show to continue using the character despite his death, while also serving as a metaphor for how Jack's abandonment and criminal behavior continue to haunt Stan psychologically even after Jack is gone. The show also reveals in Minstrel Krampus that Jack captured Krampus as a child while growing up in Lower Berchtesgaden in southern Bavaria. When Stan frees Krampus to teach Steve a lesson about good behavior, Krampus kidnaps Steve and demands Jack be brought to him for revenge. Stan uses his CIA connections to free Jack from prison, but Jack flees instead of helping rescue Steve. This demonstrates that Jack's selfishness and abandonment of family persist across multiple episodes and situations. Jack is later shot by Santa Claus while protecting Stan, and the blood of Jack and Krampus combines when Jack is wounded. This combination revives Jack and transforms him into the new Krampus, giving Jack supernatural powers and the responsibility to punish naughty children. In this Krampus form, Jack appears in later episodes, including 90 North, 0 West, where he helps Stan save Steve from Santa Claus. The show later returns Jack to human form in Klaustastrophe.tv without explaining how this transformation reversed. Jack Smith's character arc demonstrates American Dad's approach to complex family relationships and generational trauma. Jack's abandonment of Stan creates psychological damage that affects Stan's entire life, influencing his relationships with his own children and his desperate need to prove his masculinity. Stan's decision to hire a fake father for 20 years shows the extent of Stan's shame about his absent father and his need to present a normal family image. Jack's true identity as a jewel thief rather than a heroic spy represents the shattering of Stan's childhood fantasies about his father. Stan wanted to believe Jack left for noble reasons related to secret missions, but the reality is that Jack simply prioritized stealing jewels over being a father. This revelation forces Stan to confront the truth that his father never valued their relationship and that Stan's idealized image of Jack was entirely false. The show uses Jack's intermittent returns to explore whether people can genuinely change or whether criminal behavior and selfishness represent permanent character traits. Jack shows moments of moral awareness and even self-sacrifice, such as turning himself in rather than corrupting Steve. However, Jack continues committing crimes and abandoning his family across multiple episodes, suggesting that his core nature remains unchanged despite brief moments of conscience. Jack's relationship with Roger adds comedy while highlighting Jack's manipulative charisma. Roger develops an intense man-crush on Jack despite knowing Jack is a criminal who abandoned his family. Jack's ability to charm Roger into abandoning Francine in the basement demonstrates how Jack uses charisma as a tool for manipulation. Roger's infatuation with Jack persists even after Jack betrays Stan, showing that Jack possesses genuine charm that can override people's better judgment. The fake father subplot represents one of American Dad's most absurd premises, while also serving as genuine character development. Stan hired a complete stranger from Home Depot to pretend to be his father for 20 years, attending family events and maintaining an elaborate deception. This stranger apparently agreed to this arrangement and successfully played the role until his death. The family shows little emotion when this fake grandfather dies, with Stan cold and distant at the funeral. Steve never mentions his fake grandfather again, despite being the only family member who seemed to enjoy spending time with him. Jack Smith's criminal expertise and his one-eyed vulnerability create a character who is simultaneously dangerous and pathetic. Jack successfully executes museum heists and evades law enforcement for years, demonstrating genuine skill as a thief. However, Jack's missing eye makes him vulnerable in prison, and his fear of what other inmates would do to his eye socket shows that Jack's tough criminal persona masks real physical vulnerability and fear. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, Steve's singing voice is provided by a professional singer in canon. Steve Smith's singing voice in American Dad represents one of the show's most interesting cases where a character's abilities directly reflect their voice actor's real-world talents. Steve possesses exceptional singing ability throughout the series, performing complex musical numbers that require genuine vocal skill. This singing ability is not created through studio tricks or musical substitutes. Steve's singing voice belongs entirely to Scott Grimes, who voices the character and is a professional singer-songwriter with decades of experience in the music industry. Scott Christopher Grimes was born on the 9th of July, 1971, in Lowell, Massachusetts. Grimes began his entertainment career at a young age, making his screen debut in 1,984 Inches, the made-for-TV movie It Came Upon the Midnight Clear, alongside Mickey Rooney. Grimes also appeared in an episode of the rebooted The Twilight Zone during the mid-1980 seconds. His early acting work established him as a child performer with genuine talent, but Grimes also pursued music simultaneously with his acting career. Grimes began his professional singing career while still a teenager. In 1987, when Grimes was only 15 years old, he performed as a guest vocalist on the album Time by Richard Carpenter of the Carpenters. Richard Carpenter specifically thanked the young Grimes in the album's liner notes for his spirited performance on the song That's What I Believe. Carpenter made a prediction about Grimes's future in his liner notes, stating, "I believe young Scott to have quite a future in music." This endorsement from Richard Carpenter, one of the most successful musicians of the 1970 seconds, represented significant validation of Grimes's vocal abilities at an extremely young age. Grimes released his first full album titled Scott Grimes through A&M Records in 1989 when he was 18 years old. Richard Carpenter produced this debut album, continuing his mentorship of the young singer. The album featured the single I Don't Even Mind, which Carpenter produced. This album established Grimes as a legitimate recording artist rather than simply an actor who occasionally sang. The fact that A&M Records, a major label, signed and released an album from the teenage Grimes demonstrated industry confidence in his vocal abilities and commercial potential. After his debut album, Grimes continued his acting career while developing his music. Grimes appeared in numerous television shows and films throughout the 1990 seconds and early 2000s. His acting credits include significant roles in Party of Five, where he played Will McCorkle, and Band of Brothers, where he portrayed Technical Sergeant Donald Malarkey. Grimes also had a long-running role on ER as Dr. Archie Morris. These acting roles demonstrated Grimes' versatility as a performer, but he never abandoned his music career. Grimes released his second album, Livin' on the Run, in 2005. This album came 16 years after his debut, showing that Grimes maintained his commitment to music despite the demands of his acting career. The album's title track, Livin' on the Run, became one of Grimes' signature songs. Another song from this album, Sunset Blueved, became Grimes' most commercially successful single. Sunset Blueved peaked at number 18 on Billboard's Adult Contemporary chart in April 2005. This chart success proved that Grimes had matured into an adult musician capable of producing commercially viable music rather than being remembered only as a teenage recording artist. In 2005, the same year, Livin' on the Run was released. Grimes was hired to voice Steve Smith in Seth MacFarlane's new animated sitcom, American Dad. The show premiered on Fox in 2005 and centered on the Smith family, particularly CIA agent Stan Smith and his family members. Steve Smith is Stan and Francine's 4-year-old son, portrayed as an enthusiastic, emotional, and nerdy teenager. Steve was initially voiced by Ricky Blitt in an unaired pilot screener, but Grimes replaced Blitt for the aired pilot and has voiced Steve continuously since the show's premiere. The decision to cast Grimes as Steve proved fortuitous, given Steve's characterization as musically talented. Steve Smith is depicted throughout the series as a highly capable musician who plays multiple instruments and sings exceptionally well. Steve took up the cello to impress a girl in one episode, and in a later episode mentions he has been playing the cello since he was 9 years old. Steve also plays guitar and sings, which he showcases as part of a band in various episodes throughout the series. The show makes explicit connections between Steve's musical abilities and Scott Grimes' real music career. In the episode American Dream Factory, Steve forms a band that rehearses two specific songs, Livin' on the Run and Sunset Boulevard. These are not fictional songs created for American Dad. These are actual songs from Scott Grimes' 2005 album, Livin' on the Run. The show directly incorporated Grimes' real music into Steve's character, creating a metatextual connection between the voice actor's professional music career and the character's in-universe musical abilities. This connection means that when Steve performs Livin' on the Run or Sunset Boulevard on American Dad, viewers are hearing Scott Grimes performing his own original songs. The character is singing the voice actor's real music, creating an unusual situation where the fictional character serves as a vehicle for the voice actor's actual artistic work. This differs from most animated shows where characters might sing covers of existing popular songs or perform original songs written specifically for the show by staff composers. Grimes released his third album, Drive, in 2010, continuing his parallel careers in acting and music. By this point, Grimes had been voicing Steve for 5 years, and the character's musical abilities had become an established part of Steve's personality. The show regularly featured Steve singing, allowing Grimes to showcase his vocal abilities in almost every season. Steve's singing became one of the character's defining traits, with musical numbers becoming a regular feature of episodes focusing on Steve. Grimes expanded his musical activities beyond solo work by joining Russell Crowe's band Indoor Garden Party. Grimes served as one of the 4 singers in this band, performing alongside the Academy Award-winning actor. This collaboration brought Grimes additional attention as a musician and demonstrated his ability to work in a band context rather than only as a solo artist. The Russell Crowe connection also led to Grimes appearing in films with Crowe, including Mystery Alaska in 1999, Robin Hood in 2010, and Winter's Tale in 2014. The professional quality of Steve's singing on American Dad directly results from Scott Grimes' legitimate vocal training and decades of experience as a recording artist. When Steve performs complex musical numbers on the show, the vocal performances are not approximations or character voices attempting to sing. Steve's singing voice is Scott Grimes, singing with his full professional ability. This creates musical moments on American Dad that match or exceed the quality of dedicated musical animated shows because the voice actor performing the songs is an actual professional singer. American Dad has featured numerous elaborate musical numbers throughout its run, many of which center on Steve's singing. The show has produced full musical episodes and frequent musical sequences that rely heavily on Grimes' vocal abilities. Episodes like Daddy's Gone feature extended musical performances that showcase Steve's singing range and emotional expression. These performances would be impossible to execute with the same quality if Steve were voiced by someone without Grimes' musical background and training. The show's creators clearly write musical content for Steve with knowledge that Scott Grimes can perform at a professional level. This allows the writers to create ambitious musical sequences without worrying about whether the voice actor can execute the performance. The confidence in Grimes' abilities enables American Dad to incorporate music more extensively than many other animated sitcoms. While shows like Family Guy also feature musical numbers, American Dad can specifically showcase vocal performances through Steve that leverage Grimes' particular talents as a singer-songwriter. Steve's characterization as emotionally expressive and performative also suits Grimes' musical style. Grimes' music tends toward emotional, melodic pop and rock that requires expressive vocal delivery. Steve's personality as sensitive, dramatic, and eager to perform creates natural opportunities for musical numbers that fit Grimes' vocal strengths. The character's willingness to burst into song or perform elaborate musical numbers stems from both the character's written personality and the practical reality that the voice actor can deliver professional quality musical performances. The show occasionally draws explicit attention to Steve's exceptional singing ability, with other characters commenting on how well Steve sings. These in-universe acknowledgments reflect the real-world fact that Steve sounds exceptional because he is being performed by a professional singer. When characters within the show praise Steve's singing, they are effectively praising Scott Grimes' vocal abilities. This creates another layer of metatextual humor where the show acknowledges the unusual talent level present in the character's voice. Steve has been featured in multiple American Dad musical releases and compilations. The show released an album titled American Dad: Greatest Hits that featured songs from the series, many of which prominently featured Steve's singing and therefore Scott Grimes' vocal performances. This album allowed fans to listen to the musical numbers outside the context of the episodes, treating the songs as standalone musical works. The release of this album acknowledged that American Dad's musical content had artistic value beyond serving as jokes or plot devices within episodes. Grimes' music career outside of American Dad continues to inform his performance as Steve. Grimes regularly performs concerts and appears at fan conventions where he sings songs as Steve Smith, particularly fan-favorite musical numbers from the show. These live performances demonstrate that Grimes can replicate the vocal quality heard on the show without studio assistance or vocal processing. Fans attending these concerts or convention appearances see concrete evidence that Steve's singing voice is genuinely Scott Grimes' natural vocal ability, rather than being enhanced through studio production techniques. The continuity of Grimes, voicing Steve for nearly 2 decades, has allowed Steve's musical character to develop extensively. Over hundreds of episodes since 2005, Steve has performed an enormous catalog of songs and musical numbers. This extensive body of work showcases Grimes' versatility as a vocalist, demonstrating his ability to perform different musical genres, emotional tones, and vocal styles depending on what each episode requires. Some songs require Steve to sing romantically, others comedically, others dramatically, and Grimes adjusts his vocal delivery accordingly while maintaining Steve's consistent character voice. Steve's singing also serves storytelling purposes within episodes beyond simple entertainment value. Musical numbers often advance the plot or reveal character emotions in ways that dialogue alone cannot achieve. The quality of Steve's singing performances makes these musical storytelling moments effective because viewers can focus on the content and emotion of the songs rather than being distracted by poor vocal execution. Grimes' professional abilities ensure that musical numbers function as intended within the show's narrative structure. The relationship between Scott Grimes and Seth MacFarlane extended beyond American Dad. Grimes has also provided voices for Family Guy, another MacFarlane animated series. Grimes voiced Kevin Swanson, Joe Swanson's son who was previously thought to be dead, appearing in multiple episodes after October 2010. This casting demonstrated MacFarlane's confidence in Grimes as a voice actor beyond just the musical abilities that make him ideal for Steve Smith. MacFarlane cast Grimes in live-action work as well, featuring him as Lieutenant Gordon Malloy in The Orville, a science fiction comedy drama series that MacFarlane created and starred in. The Orville ran from 2017 to 2022, and Grimes appeared as a regular cast member throughout the series. This live-action collaboration showed that MacFarlane valued Grimes as an actor broadly, not only for his voice work or musical abilities. However, Grimes' casting as Steve Smith remains his most prominent and long-running collaboration with MacFarlane. Steve Smith's musical abilities have become inseparable from the character's identity within American Dad. When fans think of Steve, they think of a character who sings, and that singing represents genuine professional-level vocal performance. This differs from characters on other shows who might be described as good singers within the show's universe, but whose actual vocal performances are adequate rather than exceptional. Steve sounds like a professional singer because he is being performed by a professional singer, creating authenticity that would be impossible to achieve otherwise. The technical quality of Steve's musical performances also benefits from Grimes' experience in recording studios. Professional recording artists understand how to deliver optimal vocal performances in studio environments, including proper microphone technique, breath control, emotional delivery, and the ability to execute multiple takes until the performance meets professional standards. When Grimes records Steve singing for American Dad episodes, he brings decades of studio experience to the vocal booth, ensuring that the recorded performances meet the quality standards expected in professional music production. Some episodes have featured Steve participating in musical competitions or performing for audiences within the show's universe. These scenarios require Steve's singing to be convincingly good enough to justify other characters' reactions and the outcomes of the competitions. If Steve were voiced by someone without professional vocal training, these plots would strain credibility because viewers would hear an amateur voice while characters within the show praise the performance as exceptional. Grimes' abilities eliminate this potential disconnect between what viewers hear and what the show's narrative claims about Steve's talent level. Steve's singing has also been used for emotional moments within the show, not just comedy. Several episodes feature Steve performing songs during poignant or dramatic scenes where the vocal performance must carry genuine emotional weight. Grimes' experience as a singer-songwriter who writes and performs emotional material in his own music gives him the tools to deliver these performances effectively. Steve can express sadness, longing, joy, or other complex emotions through song, because Grimes understands how to communicate emotion through vocal performance. The show has occasionally acknowledged the unusual quality of Steve's voice more directly. In some episodes, characters comment on Steve's voice in ways that break the fourth wall slightly, drawing attention to the fact that Steve's voice actor clearly has exceptional vocal abilities. These moments play with the audience's awareness that they are hearing something special when Steve sings, creating humor from the contrast between Steve's dorky character and his remarkable singing voice. American Dad's musical content has influenced other animated sitcoms to incorporate more ambitious musical elements. The success of Steve's musical numbers demonstrated that animated sitcoms could feature professional quality vocal performances that viewers would appreciate and remember. This potentially influenced decisions by other animated shows to cast actors with musical backgrounds or to develop musical content more extensively. While American Dad did not invent musical content in animated sitcoms, the consistent quality of Steve's performances raised expectations for what animated musical numbers could achieve. Scott Grimes' music career has benefited from his association with American Dad as well. The show introduced Grimes' music to audiences who might not have discovered it otherwise. Fans of Steve Smith sometimes seek out Scott Grimes' albums to hear more of the voice they enjoy on the show. This creates a mutually beneficial relationship where Grimes' music career strengthens Steve's character, while Steve's popularity promotes Grimes' music to potential new fans. The longevity of American Dad means that Grimes has spent nearly 20 years voicing Steve Smith and performing musically as the character. This represents a significant portion of Grimes' overall career and has become perhaps his most recognizable role, despite his extensive work in live-action television and film. Future generations will likely remember Scott Grimes primarily as the voice of Steve Smith, and specifically as the singing voice that made Steve memorable to American Dad fans. Steve Smith's singing ability represents a unique case in animated television where a character's talents are not exaggerated or fictionalized, but instead represent the authentic abilities of the voice actor. When Steve sings exceptionally well, he truly is singing exceptionally well because Scott Grimes is performing those songs. This authenticity creates a foundation for Steve's musical character that could never be achieved through casting someone without professional musical training. The decision to cast Scott Grimes as Steve Smith was fortuitous for American Dad's creative development, enabling musical storytelling that has become central to the show's identity and Steve's character. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.